Welcome to the meeting. I'd like to call this Anchorage Assembly meeting to order. This is our regularly scheduled meeting of September 12, 2017. Madam Clerk, please do the roll call.
Mr. Weddleton?
Here.
Mr. Rivera?
Present.
Mr. Steele?
Here.
Ms. LaFrance? Here. Mr. Trainee?
Here.
Mr. Dunbar?
Here.
Mr. Croft?
Here.
Mr. Peterson?
Present.
Mr. Constant?
Here.
Ms. Domboski?
Present.
Mr. Dyson? Chair Trainee, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Croft, would you listen to the Pledge of Allegiance, please, sir?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Next item of business, the minutes of previous meetings are on none. Mayor's report, Mr. Mayor, sir?
Nothing to report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I may.
Yes, Mr. Rivera.
Thank you. Just a quick point of personal privilege. Today, we'll be talking a lot about welcoming, and in the spirit of welcoming, I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascan people, and we are grateful to be welcomed here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Sunday Chair's report. In the interest of time, we're not going to go through that. Committee reports. John, we'll start with you, sir.
Nothing to report.
You've
You'll
got a
hear.
committee meeting on Thursday.
Did we have one last Thursday?
This coming Thursday, I think you've got one, don't you?
Do we have one on Thursday? We are discussing.
This Thursday.
Yes. Everyone come.
What time is it and where, sir?
9 a.m. Thursday at Public Works.
What are you going to be discussing?
We will be discussing 2 items. Oh,
That's
the
the guy right
marijuana.
next to
I'm
you.
sorry. Yeah, it's very big. It's the on-site consumption regulations that were put out by the state, and we will be simply looking at them and seeing if we want to send in some comments on those. We will not be making rules for Anchorage. We'll be simply reflecting our views of what was presented to us.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rivera, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will be having a Assembly Committee on Homelessness next Wednesday, September 20th at 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at City Hall, 8th floor, Mayor's Conference Room. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Steele, sir.
I have no report, Mr. Chairman.
Melissa France, ma'am.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm still continuing to work on an ordinance that's a follow-up to our efforts in the taxi industry last year. Once that is in draft form, we will have another transportation committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Croft, sir.
Public Safety Committee met last week on the 6th and primarily talking about the opiate and heroin epidemics, but hearing reports from Health and APD. We'll meet next week on the 20th after the Homelessness Committee, so either starting at 12:30 or 1, but following that committee meeting.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Ethics and Election Committee met last Wednesday, or 2 Wednesdays ago, the 30th of August, and we discussed the progress that's being made to prepare us for vote by mail next April. And then we got to see our sorting machine that had been delivered the previous week. And so the committee got a chance to walk around and take a look at our machine and how it was set up. And so that was exciting. We've been working for a long time to get that machine ordered, and now it's been installed. So we're actually making progress, and it seems like we're headed in the right direction. Also, the Legislative Committee is having a meeting next Monday, the 18th at noon at City Hall in room 240. It's room 240 next Wednesday at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I was with you when you were looking at that new equipment. It looks a lot different than the 20-plus-year-old equipment we're now using and the city's using. Nobody uses computer 20 years old in their homes. Can't see why we're doing it to do voting. Mr. Constant, sir.
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Domboski, ma'am.
No report.
Mr. Dyson, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Audit Committee met, reviewed the audit done done by BDO. No significant issues were identified, several of them that where adjustments need to be made with good reasons why. And apparently the city has had an exemplary record of doing their audits to state and federal things for something like 19 years in a row. And I congratulate city employees who have a part in that and in the execution of their duties. It appears to be a commendable record. Thank you.
You ran a great meeting, Mr. Dyson. Thanks. I know Mr. Nabowski was on the line. I think it was a great meeting. It was good to hear what they had to say about our financial status. So thank you.
Yep. And I learned a lot, and I suspect others did as well. And the committee unanimously agreed to pass the report on to the larger body.
Good. Let's go for those items. We need to pull a little further discussion. John, I'm going to start on your end, sir.
Nothing.
Mr. Rivera, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Items 9 Alpha 2 and 9 Echo 1.
Mr. Steele, sir.
No items, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. France, ma'am.
No items, thank you.
Mr. Dunbar, sir.
9 Alpha 1 for reading. I think one of my other colleagues is going to be reading it, but I'm not sure who. Oh, you. Okay, Eric, I just pulled it. Also, 9 Echo 6.
Mr. Croft, sir.
Nothing to pull.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No items this evening.
Thank you, sir.
9D4 and 9D9, and for item
9D4.
4 and 9D9. And for number 9F5, I would like to be added as a sponsor with you, sir.
Which one, sir?
The Port of Alaska.
Okay. Good. Happy to have you on there. Ms. Nabowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Closures or anything?
No, sir, not tonight that I noticed.
This may be a record.
I would like to pull item 9 Bravo 1, 9 Charlie 1, and Mr. Chair, if you'd allow it, I'd love to be added as a co-sponsor to 9 Foxtrot 1.
Please do, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Dyson, sir.
Nothing.
Okay, we have pulled item 9A2, 9E1, 9A1, 9E6, 9D4, 9D9, 9B1, 9C1. Anything else, Madam Clerk? Okay. So we pulled those items for a little further discussion. And now we need to get down to addendum agenda. I need a motion from you, sir, to incorporate the addendum to the agenda.
Move to incorporate the addendum to the agenda and lay it on the table items, if any.
And we'll lay it on the table, just that. Moved in second. Any objection to the incorporation of addendum to the agenda? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, we've amended the document in front of us. Was there anything on the addendum that a member wanted to pull for a little further discussion? Doesn't appear there any, Madam Clerk. I should have done that earlier. I'm sorry. Let's now vote on the balance of the consent agenda in front of us. Please vote on the balance of the consent agenda, except for those items are pulled for further discussion. That's unanimous. Got to get used to our new color scheme. Okay. First item I pulled was item 9A1. Let's pull Mr. Dunbar. Item 9A1 is Resolution Air 2017-281, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly celebrating Welcome Anchorage, recognizing National Welcoming Week 2017, and encouraging Anchorage residents to participate in community events celebrating Anchorage as a welcoming city. If I get a motion on that?
I have it for reading, so I'll move 9A1.
Second.
Okay, ask unanimous consent. See no objection, that's approved. Who's presenting? I'm presenting. Who's reading?
I am.
Go ahead, sir.
Whereas the municipality of Anchorage is a welcoming place where people, families, businesses, and institutions
Hold
thrive.
on. Who's coming down to receive it? I just wanted to get you down here. Anybody wants to shoot photos, just come down front and point out that way.
He is not shy. Where institutions thrive and the contributions of all persons are celebrated and valued, and Alaska Native history and traditions are honored. And whereas the fostering of a welcoming environment for all individuals, regardless of national origin, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, disability, or veteran status, enhances Anchorage's cultural fabric, economic growth, and overall prosperity for current and future generations. And whereas community efforts that promote understanding and collaboration between native-born and foreign-born community members are essential in encouraging and preserving Anchorage's welcoming environment and economic vitality. And whereas September 15th through the 24th, 2017, Welcoming America and its partners across the United States, including Anchorage, will be celebrating National Welcoming Week. And whereas Welcoming Anchorage and community partners will be hosting multiple events during Welcoming Week, including a naturalization ceremony in the Assembly Chambers on September 20th, a reception for Anchorage's Consular Corps at Wells Fargo's Alaska Heritage Museum on September 20th, events at the UAA Campus Bookstore, and a community celebration at the Anchorage Museum at Rasmussen Center on September 23rd. And whereas being a welcoming, inclusive community will help Anchorage to attain its goal of being the #1 city in America to live, work, and play by 2025. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Assembly resolves that September 15th to 24th, 2017, is Welcoming Week in the municipality of Anchorage and encourages all residents to join in the community celebrations highlighting Welcoming Anchorage, the contributions of our foreign-born residents, and Anchorage's diversity and inclusiveness, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 12th day of September 2017 unanimously.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, before they go away, I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda to take up item E1, 9E1 now, while they're here, so they don't have to go away. I would hope someone would second that for me.
I'll second.
Is there any objection to taking up item 91?
No, Mr. Chair, but I did have a quick comment about item 9, Alpha 1.
Will that stop us from doing this?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay, Chris, you've got your votes. So let's deal with 9E1. Make your motion.
I move to approve 91.
Motion to accept.
Motion to accept.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Ask unanimous. Seeing no objection, that is accepted.
But
Chris?
for point of privilege, I would really like to have the movers of this product, this Welcoming Anchorage Roadmap, come up and just give us a very quick brief on what that item is about so that it's in the record.
Darrell?
Mara and Amy as well.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to present you all with our Welcoming Anchorage Roadmap. The Welcoming Anchorage initiative began in this body in 2014, and the work that the Welcoming Anchorage initiative has done since that time documents the fact that inclusion and equity are vital pieces of the future of our city. We now know, thanks to the research that we've been able to do, that foreign-born Alaskans contribute over $500 million to the city's economy, the gross domestic product. And we also know, thanks to the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation, that diversity is a key feature in attracting new talent to our city. And so the report that we're presenting to you tonight represents a year's worth of work by your community. And we challenged everybody who participated in this effort, which ranged between 70 to 150 people, and we have 800 people on our mailing list now. We challenged everybody to make sure that as we were putting this document together, they were mindful of the audience, and the audience is you. So we collected residents from all over Anchorage, from Eagle River to Fairview to South Anchorage and to Girdwood. And we came up with a document that we feel reflects our rich history from our time as a small Dena'ina village until now, which is a city that we're very proud to call home. And so tonight, you'll see that the roadmap embodies the values that people came together around, the values of equity, inclusivity, and justice. And the roadmap itself is full of ideas about how to bring those values to life, how to make our community engaged, connected, and accessible, how to expand entrepreneurial and economic opportunities for people in our city, and to build the vital educational paths that will guarantee us a bright future. But most importantly, the roadmap is our story. It's a story of our community, the ways of our past, and the vision that we have to bring about a future that reflects those values. And so we're proud today to present you with this roadmap and to present you with a number of ideas that people from all over the community came together to create and to propose to you all. And so we're excited to see what you do with it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Question from some members? Don't appear to be. Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just two quick comments. First, on item 9A1 regarding the Welcoming Week resolution, Mr. Hess won't brag. He's not prone to do that, so I will. Mr. Hess's leadership, we host the largest number of events in the country during Welcoming Week, which has been recognized by the national organization Welcoming America. So I just really want to thanks to Daryl for his leadership. And then regarding item 9, Echo 1, thank you, Dr. Kimmel, for those words. It's now in all our ballpark to seriously review these recommendations and move forward on them. And I look forward to working with my colleagues on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Constant, sir.
I actually do have a question for the folks here who did the work, the First Lady. Other than the events next week, with this roadmap, what are the next steps for us that you would suggest?
Thank you very much for the question, through the chair. So there are a series of different options that you can choose from. It's a great menu of opportunities. I think one of the things that the mayor's office is hard at work on is developing a language access plan to ensure that people who have limited English proficiency at this point will have access to basic and vital services. So we're grateful to the mayor's office and to the other departments within the city that are working on that. We're also looking at creating more entrepreneurial opportunities for people, particularly in low-income neighborhoods. We're working with partner agencies on that issue. And so we're really hopeful that in the next few months, we will be developing a framework to bring out those kinds of opportunities for people.
Can I add one thing to that? So we just sent out a newsletter today that actually, with all of the vehicles that are inside the roadmap, where the public can go and sign up to work in the work groups on each of those different things. So this is a community effort from here forward. It won't be solely in your hands. It won't be solely in the community's hands, but a combined collaborative effort.
And who are you?
Sorry, Amy Kaufman, Special Assistant to the Mayor.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Next item in front is item 9A2. Mr. Rivera, you pulled that. This is AR 2017-283, a resolution of the English Municipal Assembly recognizing and celebrating September 15th through October 15th, 2017 as Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month in Anchorage, Alaska.
Move to approve.
Second.
Ask unanimous consent. See no objection. That's approved. Mr. Rivera, who's reading and who's presenting?
I will be reading, and
Mr.
Ms. LaFrance will
gonna
be
present.
presenting.
Good. Would the people come forward that are here?
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and celebrating September 15th through October 15th, 2017 as Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month in Anchorage, Alaska. Whereas Hispanic and Latino Americans have played important roles in American and Alaska history, from making important discoveries to excelling in science, education, law, politics, music, art, and sports, and Alaska is home to approximately 40,000 people of Hispanic or Latino origin, making up over 5.5% of Alaska's population, with over 56% of Hispanic and Latino Alaskans living in Anchorage. And whereas the U.S. Congress first recognized Hispanic heritage in 1968 with the enactment of Public Law 90-498, calling upon the people of the United States, especially the educational community, to observe a week with appropriate ceremonies and activities. And whereas September 15th was chosen as the starting date for National Hispanic Heritage Month because it marks the anniversary of the independence of 5 Latin American countries, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua, with a month-long recognition also including Independence Days of Mexico, Chile, and Belize. And whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month celebrates the long and important presence in the United States of those Hispanic and Latino people who trace their heritage to Spain, Mexico, and the Spanish-speaking nations of Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. And whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month is a time to reflect on the history of Hispanic and Latino Americans and their contributions to our state, nation, and world, with community celebrations taking place throughout Anchorage and Alaska. And whereas 2017 marks the 1-year anniversary of Sol de Medianoche, the only Latino and bilingual newspaper in Alaska, which has printed 7 editions and distributed 25,000 copies, fulfilling their mission of informing, educating, and uniting Alaska's Latino and Hispanic communities. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes and celebrates September 15th through October 15th, 2017 as Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 12th day of September 2017.
Appreciate you noticing that. Next item for us, item 9C1, actually 9B1.
There you go.
AR 2017-293, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $75,000 from State of Alaska Department of Health and Human Social Services as a grant award to the State Direct Federal Pass-Through Grants Fund 231 for the provision of health education to prevent HIV, STI, and unintended pregnancy in the Department of Health and Human Services. Ms. Dembowski, pulled that, ma'am.
Move to approve.
Second.
Ms. Dembowski.
Melinda, I have a couple of questions. If you can come up, please. In general, I'm familiar with some of these programs, but can you give us in a nutshell the type of programs specific to content that would be subject to this funding?
Yes, the Teenage Unintended Pregnancy Program, in addition to our HIV and other reproductive health programs. In particular, this program provides educational opportunities under the grant called TUPP, or Teenage Unintended Pregnancy Prevention Program. It's a national best practice model in which we educate between the ages of 14 and 19, although we'll go higher than that, across Anchorage in different treatment facilities, for example, McLaughlin, Volunteers of America, and these types of programs where we have particularly vulnerable teens in which we want them to make healthy decisions related to relationships. It's a relationship-based model. It's focused on healthy relationships, reducing unintended pregnancies, as well as eliminating domestic violence and other types of social problems related to vulnerable youth.
Okay, and with the going down the line of unintended pregnancies, when we say prevent unintended pregnancies, this program does not provide for Plan B, correct?
That is correct.
One of the other things I want to ask you about in this particular program, does this have any intersection other than McLaughlin with the Anchorage School District or the program formerly known as Rare T? I don't know if you're familiar with Rare T.
I'm not familiar with Rare Teen, and we're still working with the coordinator of the health services as well as the nursing services through the Anchorage School District to determine if this will be allowed in the schools.
Okay. The reason I'm a little, I'm going to date myself here, but Rare T was a program of the Anchorage School District back in the 90s, And I was actually one of the first student teachers actually in that program. It's reduced AIDS risk effectively in teenagers. And I actually had the opportunity to fly all over the state of Alaska and talk about safety and abstinence and all those things and how to reduce risk. It was a great program, and I don't know if ASD still has it or if it's evolved into something else, but it would be something that, as a student teacher, I found it was it was an effective program, and it as a student, standing up in front of a classroom talking about these intimate issues really forced me out of my shell, let's put it that way. But it was a great program, and I got a lot of great feedback from a lot of my peers. So it would be something I would love for you to follow back up with ASD and see if they have that type of model, because I know sometimes, especially when it's peer-to-peer contact, obviously in some of the delicate situations it can't be, but sometimes those peer-to-peer contact models really are effective.
Yes, one of the areas that we focus on is having cohort groups so that kids go through the entire 9-hour session as a cohort group, not necessarily all in one setting, and there are incentives, which is part of the budget, are the incentives, gift cards and things like that. So the longer you participate in the entire class curriculum, you receive those gift cards.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this item? Ask unanimous consent. See no objection, that's approved, Madam Clerk. Next item in front of us should be item 9C1. Item 9C1 is AM 617, 2017. Recommendation award to JTA Construction, JTA, to provide construction of the Fish Creek Trail Connection Project for the Municipality of Anchorage, MOA Project Management and Engineering, PME, 2017 C050, $951,414.50.
Move to approve.
And let's see who pulled that one.
I did.
Ms. Dombrowski.
Thank you. Is somebody from Parks and Rec here by chance? All right, Mr. Abbott, you're up.
It's a project management operated project. If you need somebody on this, Jerry Hansen's available.
Oh, that's fine. I love Jerry. Yeah, come on down. You drew the short straw. So, Jerry, I'll just start. My understanding, the funding for this is coming from state and federal grants in its totality, correct?
It's correct. Parks and Rec did have to put a match. When we do a federal grant project, they do have to have a match. I think it was, I don't know the exact number right now, I think it was about 9% of the total project cost.
Okay. So, since PM&E is the one that's going to be overseeing this, okay, can you explain to me the parameters of the grant? Because for some reason I was just going straight with, because I was thinking it was a Parks and Rec project. Are we allowed to move this money to somewhere else? I'm trying to understand if this is really the highest best use, or if we have other projects that would be a higher use to benefit from these grants.
I'm not sure if we could move it to something else. This was what ranked as one of the higher projects it's a missing connection for the Fish Creek Trail.
Ranked by who?
By the, I believe it was our bike trail committee that's there with state and federal funds and us and Parks and Rec.
So in a time of economic hardship, which I would say that the city has been strained recently, I try to look for things that we can fix versus expand. And I'm trying to understand in our ranking if we have items that should be fixed, or if, in fact, all those things have been taken care of and now we have nothing else to use this money for so go ahead and make more connectivity.
No, there's a lot of projects that could be done out there. This is a missing connection on Fish Creek Trail. We have right now 3 other projects that are working on that. 2 others are part of the various federal grants. the section that goes from 46 over to Northwood, and then from about McRae going almost over to Northern Lights Boulevard. And then we have a section of trail that's on the Fish Creek Trail that we're just finishing up right now. That's part of the Turnagain Boulevard road construction. So this whole trail system right there would be basically complete by next summer. The two sections that are, other sections that are federally funded are going to be bid this spring, or this fall probably, and be constructed by the DOT.
Okay, so if I understand this right, what you just said is essentially the funding for this, two sections of it are for existing trails that are going to be rehabbed or something, and one section is new, the Fish Creek part, or am I totally misunderstanding?
You're pretty close. There's four sections total that we're doing. 3 sections are reconstructions of existing trail that were in bad shape, didn't meet some ADA standards, and the section almost in the middle, this section from Northwood over to Spenard Road, there's no trail currently right now.
Okay, how much of the budget do you think that Fish Creek portion is going to eat up? Is it minimal to the rest of the project, or would you say that's the substantial part of the budget?
This section that we're trying to award tonight?
Yeah, well, I'm talking about my understanding of what you said, and sorry, I might be a little slow here in the group. My understanding of what you said is this $951,414.50 is encompassing of not only rehabilitation of things that need to be fixed, but also an expansion. And so I'm trying to understand if the expansion is a minimal part of the appropriation or if the expansion is the larger part of the appropriation.
The expansion is only a portion of the entire project for the Fish Creek Trail. I don't have the percentage right with me, but it's not certainly the majority of the work on this.
You have answered my question. Thank you. That's the only question I have for you, and I'll just make a couple comments. Thank you. So,
Mr. Dabowski?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your indulgence. As I look at these projects and evaluate these projects, I think it's really our responsibility to maintain the public assets that we have. And I think, especially when you come to whether it's roadways or maybe it's trails that people are traversing, I think it's important to make sure safety standards are met. Listening to the project, the director of PM&E, he said there's portions of the trail that are in really bad shape, and I take him at his word. I've worked with him for a long time, and I find him to be an honest man, so I have no reason to doubt that. My concern is the more we expand our infrastructure, the more it's going to cost on our budgets to maintain it as we go down the road. That's why I asked those questions I asked. I actually walked in here tonight thinking this was going to be a big part of the appropriation, and frankly, I wasn't going to vote for it. I'm a bit torn, but at the same time, listening to Jerry's testimony, I believe him to be accurate, and this is a small part of the appropriation or a lesser part of the appropriation. So I'll support it, but no, going forward, if we're coming forward trying to use up grant money just to use grant money and make things bigger, it's going to cost us more in the long term, and I won't be supportive of that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mr. Steele, sir, on item 9C1.
Yeah, I just wanted to say we have had presentations. There have been presentations on this particular project when we applied for the grant. It goes along with the Turnagain Boulevard upgrades that we currently have, trying to and we have a bridge replacement that has to take place, but it's very well supported by Midtown and by Turnagain in terms of an integral part of the upgrade. Ultimately, we're hoping to connect this trail and have a complete connection all the way to the coastal trail. and that would then give the people of Midtown Spenard an ability to get on the coastal trail via this network.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Constant, sir, on 9C1.
Yeah, just briefly, over the last 2 weeks, I only heard on two matters from the public, and this was certainly one of them. I heard more on this than any other, and so I know a lot of people who are in support of this.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott, sir, you're in line.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the risk of trying to talk an assembly member out of not supporting an administrative recommendation, I need to clarify some of the comments that Jerry made, and he's available if there's more questions. The $950,000 on the agenda tonight is exclusively for the construction of the new portion of the trail. So there are separate projects, several of which have already been awarded, several of which are to be awarded, that are for the rehab of the other sections of the trail. So I think we may have left you with a different impression earlier, and I didn't want to leave that unclarified at this point. So the $950 is for the new trail section to be constructed starting this fall and concluding next summer. And then there is other work that Jerry alluded to, the rehab work on existing trail sections, that is funded separately.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. We appreciate that. Mr. Croft, sir.
Yeah, I was on these section of the trails that we're discussing this weekend. We had park cleanups in Valley of the Moon where we were clearing out brush. I did that. And then we were clearing out in the Barber Street Park area. That was mainly creek cleanup, and my son and I were pulling the debris that had been pulled out. We were getting it to the dump. It's just right now it's a neat segments of parks, right? It's not joined up. The trail has fits and starts, but it really the community came out for that. They were in the water cleaning it up. It's really used, but it could be used so much more if it can connect up. And this is an important part of getting that connected up into a trail system where you have these nice, neat, used parks, but it could be so much more with this. So I'd urge members to vote in support of it. It's appreciated by the community. It's used, and this type of connection makes it so much more usable.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. Mr. Dyson, sir. If you wish. We're at ease for a minute, too. The at ease is over. If members return their seats. Mr. Dyson, sir? Okay. Any other comments from assembly members? If not, please vote. This will appropriate $900,000 and change.
Big money.
That was approved. Next item in front of us was pulled by Ms. Dombowski. It's item 9D4. Amendment number 1 to professional services contract number 20151235 with Alaska Water Resources Engineering LLC, AWR, for Chester Creek Flooding Lagoon to A Street Project Management Engineering Department, PM&E, project number 14-19, $358,366. I need a motion on that.
Move to approve.
Second.
Ms. Dombowski, you pulled this.
I actually pulled this one.
Sorry, Chris, you pulled it.
Yep. All right. Just a brief comment on this project. Previously, you've heard me have some conversations about my respect for Merrifield. And this project is basically from Arctic Boulevard down to the Chester Creek and the Westchester Lagoon. And this has been an endemic area of flooding for years. Now, through the public process of this project, as it was initially proposed to the community and vetted through the community, there were several members of the community of Fairview down, who suggested that the scope of this project be expanded to include the Sitka Park wetland basin, because it is in fact the last catchment basin, it's the last floodplain as water stops on its way down to Westchester Lagoon. Now, Merrifield has its sights on paving wetlands, Class A wetlands. They'll figure out a way to make an exchange, but they're going to put a bunch of pavement in that area sometime in the future, although they'll tell you, we don't have plans for that right now. It's just in our plan. So, what's my point? If we are going to go through the process of mitigating floods from Arctic Boulevard to Westchester Lagoon, and then pave over the last catchment basin above this project after we have spent millions of dollars to fix this flood problem, we are very likely to reboot the flood problem and have to spend these millions of dollars once again. Now, the neighborhood made this argument and consistently heard the message back from the contractor, from Merrifield, and from everyone else that there's just not funds to study up above Arctic Boulevard. That's not part of the project. So, I am glad to see that the muni is opting for the smallest scale of projects at this time, rather than the larger scale projects that could have been implemented under the options that were made available. Because it's very likely, once we spend this million and however many millions after for the actual construction costs, that we're going to be back at this table having this conversation again. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions by Assembly members? Don't appear to be any. Please, sorry, Mr. Dyson, sir. Have any comments, questions on this? You just showed up on here. Did you want to say anything, Fred?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Did you want to say anything, Fred?
I did. That's why I pushed the button.
Good.
Yeah, thank you. All of us, I think, have to realize what are the valid functions of government. And certainly infrastructure is one of them, and something that private people have a difficulty doing. The second one, maybe even more important, is to solve the problems that government creates. And here we have a situation where inadequate drainage is flooding homes. And I understand from people in the area that there's a specific group of homes that have been flooded several times. Ms. Demboski and I have had a group of homes similar. There it was the state's culvert that wasn't adequate. The darn thing was too high. Those people could not sell their homes. They could not refinance their homes. They couldn't, and the remedial work that they often had to do was really burdensome, and government was responsible. And I think we have no option but to approve this sort of thing, because it comes close to one of the highest orders of things that government needs to take care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Any other comments from Assembly members? If not, please vote. That item is approved by the body. Next one is pulled by you, Mr. Constant, also, I think. It's item 9D9. It's AM 623, 2017. Sole source purchase of System Center Enhancement Configuration Manager portable platform from Chryson for the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska MOA Information Technology Department, ITD, $98,400. Mr. Constant, I think you pulled that.
Yes.
If I get a motion to approve on that?
Move to approve.
So there's a second? Second. Mr. Constant.
Yeah, it's a simple question, actually. I just didn't have a chance to get it in writing. So this is for the purchase and for the license. So what are the annual costs going to be after we purchase this?
It'll be about 15% a year of that license.
So roughly 15,000? Okay, thank you.
No. We dealt with 91 already. We dealt with 91. Remember, I took it out of order. No.
We can move.
Any problems? Anything else you want to discuss on this item, Chris?
I just wanted to know how much it was going to cost us
Okay.
every year.
Please vote. Item was approved by the body. We pulled 9E1 earlier and we addressed that issue, so it's not going to be pulled again because it passed. So we need to get down to item 9E6. Was pulled by you, Mr. Dunbar.
Yes.
Need a motion to accept.
Move to accept.
Mr. Dunbar.
So I just wanted to use this opportunity for my colleagues, those who are new to the body in particular, to discuss this program a little bit. I certainly hope that we accept this information, and Mandy was helpful, Ms. Honest was helpful in providing me some information, further information about this. You can see it's very few bars downtown take advantage of this safety hour program. In fact, only 4 do. This is something that we raised last year, and I hope that we have a wider conversation about and think about ways that we can improve this program. The safety hour provides an extra hour where people can stay out of the cold, can wait for a cab or another form of transportation. Unfortunately, this is from the information that Mandy provided, so few bars participate, partly because there is no incentive to be part of the program. It costs the establishments more to stay open longer, and their servers don't get tips from the patrons. There are also some things about the program itself. They have to very quickly gather up all the drinks, they have to turn on the lights, they have to turn off the music, there are certain requirements. And so it's not a very effective program, and through no fault of our clerk's office, of course. So I just want to stress that this is a program that doesn't seem to be functioning particularly well, and I hope that we can work on it at some point this year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments from Assembly members? And it was not a fault of the person that brought it forward to the Assembly and got it approved either. Thought I'd tell you that. It does work for what we wanted it to do. If you've got a bad winter, you're going to see a lot more bars wanting to do this. We've been fortunate the last couple of years. We've had a nice winter. Give me a 30 to 40 degree below zero winter, and we're going to have people wanting to do this. Get some off the streets.
Anchorage is a 40 degree below winter. We're going to have a lot of other problems.
It's going to happen. Please vote on the acceptance of this item. That's approved by the body. We're now down on our agenda to item 12A, appearance requests. And the first one is Leonard Stanley Sr. Are you here, sir? Well, we can take him up till 6:30. We'll see about picking him up. Next one would be item 12B. And that's
Camkeo and Sithon.
you announce this one. I'll kill the name and they'll hate me for life. Try it.
So Camkeo and Sithon Kamleo, are they here for an appearance request regarding?
Okay.
Thank you. Regarding homeless, let me see this.
In the area between North Cleven,
North Cleven Street and Mountain View
Mountain
Drive.
View Drive. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is Leonard
Sir,
Stanley,
you speaking to the mic, please?
I believe we're back to 12A.
and I'm here to
Your name's what,
talk
sir?
about a problem that we've had for quite some
What's your
time.
name, sir?
My name is Leonard Stanley,
Okay, we went back to A then. Okay.
and I'm a resident of Rabbit Creek View Heights subdivision. I'm here to talk about a problem that we've had for quite some time, like about 20 years. It hasn't been resolved. And if you bear with me here. This has been going through the municipality for 15 years. The property is 16,000 Francesca Drive. Been in violation for numerous different violations. The residents and owners of the property Mr. David Zabel and Jane Zabel continued with the bringing in junk, adding more junk, bringing it in, taking it out, coming in all times of night, discarded appliances and salvages. We have a Little Rabbit Creek that flows in the back of the property or on the property. I'm not sure which, but it could be a lot of contaminants there. I've spoken and written to the zoning enforcement office and the assistant municipal attorney, mayor's office during mayor baggage time. Fines have been levied on the amount of over $3,000, and nothing's changed. Everything's the same. The case was opened in the municipality courts in 2008, and the municipality of Anchorage got a judgment against the owners in 2012. The municipality foreclosed on the property, but in April 2013, municipal manager signed a quitclaim deed to Ms. Jane Zabel for the property for $1. Several times in the previous years, Zabels have paid delinquent taxes after foreclosure on the property, and a certificate of redemption was issued. There was no certificate issued after the foreclosure on September 12 of 2012, and the quitclaim deed said nothing about the payment of the delinquent taxes. In signing a quitclaim deed, did the municipality give up all claims to the fines due them from 2012 judgment? That we don't know. A lot of taxpayer money has been spent pursuing this case, and even after getting a judgment against the owners, nothing's been enforced.
So your time is up.
Pardon?
Your time is up. You're given 3 minutes. Your time is up now, sir. We may have some more questions for you, okay? Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Anything else? We'd just like to know what's going on. Is anything going to be done about it?
Mr. Falsey, are we in litigation on this item currently?
Through the chair, we are not currently in litigation on this item, but the speaker is correct. We were in a protracted litigation on this item, which frankly was brought to my attention through this appearance request, and I appreciate your bringing it to the Assembly. In 2014, I believe, the Supreme Court of Alaska confirmed all of our victories in the lower court, and we had a sizable judgment against the Sabos for operating an illegal junkyard that is not in compliance with the zoning ordinances. My understanding, which I have just come to understand in the last few weeks now, is that the enforcement of that money judgment was then somewhat stymied by the fact that it seemed there was no way for the municipality to remediate the junk problem without finding a lot of money to remove all the vehicles first and without possibly coming into ownership of the property. I'll say we are now taking a fresh look at this, and I think that we may be able to crack this nut in a different way, but I appreciate you bringing the issue to our attention.
Mr. Dunbar and then Mr. Wilton. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Traney. Well, I guess this is, first I'll ask you, Mr. Falsey, are you at liberty to tell us what that new strategy is, or is that a legal strategy that we're holding close to the vest at this point?
At this point, I wouldn't want to disclose anything too publicly that we haven't fully baked, but I'll say that this takes us into the world of what happens when you get a paper money judgment against a potentially insolvent party or against a party who has some assets which aren't worth as much as the money judgment is worth. Here, I think the municipality's interest is less even in collecting the money judgment and more in bringing the parcel into compliance with the zoning laws. And so I think we are now taking a new look at it from that perspective to see whether leaving some of our paper fines on the table couldn't get us to a place where the parcel would ultimately be remediated. It is still a moving target at this point, but we'll happily update the Assembly or anyone else as we get further down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Falsey. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Before I go to Mr. Wilton, Mr. Falsey, could you come back to our next Assembly meeting and let us know the status on this? That's in 2 weeks.
Certainly.
Thank you. Mr. Wilton, sir?
Well, I appreciate this, and thanks, Mr. Stanley, for coming to talk about this. We had talked about, I had spoken about this with Mr. Stanley several months ago and went up there and took a look, and this is an unbelievable extreme example of just a junkyard in the middle of a nice neighborhood. And it is frustrating. This is just one of many cases where people who simply don't care if they're fined, we have no control over them. If they don't pay their taxes, which they had failed to pay their taxes, and apparently they did pay their taxes, and that's how they got their deed to their property back. But then these huge fines, far more than their taxes, still sit there, and they owe them to the city, and they really have a debt to the neighborhood to fix up this junkyard. And we have apparently no way. I hope Mr. Falsey comes up with a way to solve it, because this one got too far along, and we need to do it before it hits a point where it's so expensive to haul the junk cars out that selling the property doesn't cover the cost. And we've got several in my district, and I know Mr. Constantine told me he could give me a day-long tour of similar properties in his area. But we got to, if someone just blows off the fines, they're free. They don't have to worry about things. And it's a problem. Thank you.
Mr. Dyson, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And certainly to the city, there's lots of private firms that, i.e. wrecking yards, automobile recycling places, that I would suggest the city send out a request for proposals on what they would pay or be subsidized for. I'd be surprised if some enterprising outfit wouldn't haul everything off for nothing and so on. It happens to be that scrap steel is at record low prices on the world market, and that has negatively impacted that industry, but there's still lots of other things that could be salvaged. Anyways, I think there's a private sector solution, and all the city would have to do is authorize them deal with not having somebody to sign the title off and haul them off. I bet somebody could do it in 4 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Sir, in 2 weeks, I've asked Falsey to give us a report on the status. So we're going to come back to our next assembly meeting. We may be able to give you some advice as to what's going on with this. Falsey is our attorney.
I'm sorry?
Falsey, the gentleman was speaking as a city attorney. He says he'll have an answer for us in 2 weeks. So come back in 2 weeks for our next assembly meeting. We'll find out what the answer is for you, sir.
Thank you.
Dyson, anything else? You just showed back up again, Fred.
Sorry?
Nothing. You just showed back up again. Don't worry about it. My fault. You have anything else? Okay. The next person to speak to us is Kamako and Sithorn Camus regarding homeless group in area between North Cleven and Mount View Drive. Are they here? Okay, Bud. Knox, are you here? I didn't see you in a chair last time you were here, Bud.
I was in the chair. You wasn't paying attention, that's why.
Okay, you try and bring the microphone down so we can hear you.
I can take care of
And Bud and I have known each other for years. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Just bring it down for him.
No, I'm stand up.
Okay.
How you doing, Bud?
Above ground. Anyway, I think I spoke to someone about this. I think I spoke to Mr. Constant about one of the problems we're having. One problem we have, very serious to me, is there was no meeting whatsoever about tearing up our street. They put this door thing on the door and showed us what they were going to do to it. I thought there was supposed to be some kind of hearing when they do stuff like this. They're making a bicycle lane out of a whole street, 10th Avenue.
We're going to ask some questions when you're done, Bud.
Oh, when I'm done, okay. Let me get this rest of it. The next thing is about our alley. I've called 3 or 4 times to get it graded. And the last time I called, I kind of got pissy with the lady and didn't mean to. I tried to call her back to apologize, but she wouldn't answer her phone. But she said that they don't have anything to do with the alley anymore. It's the federal government. When did the hell the federal government take over grading the alley? And snow removal. How are they going to remove snow off the street with that bicycle thing, blocking the street? We have a problem with that now. And that's about all I have to say about that. We got a port down there that's falling apart, but we got the money to put the bicycle lane in there. And the reason the port's falling apart because that idiot Sheffield didn't know what he was doing. I know him very well. I've known him for 30 years. He's a vacuum cleaner salesman, not a contractor. And I don't know who appointed him to that, but that's a good job. You only got 3 handicap parkings out here in this deal. 3. So we only got 3 people in town that are handicapped, right? Your seats are wore out, but I bet you guys got some good seats, but the seats in these things are wore out. You sit down in them and they go to the ground. I'm done. You got any questions?
Mr. Constant does. Mr. Constant.
Not actually a question. It's first to apologize. Bud lives about 6 lots away from me, and there's another person who lives just 2 lots away from me. And I apologize on behalf of the city that the notice wasn't really clear to folks, and I went into the project management office and kind of asked, hey, what's going on here? And they committed to getting the notices on the doors because they realized there was some information that slipped through. And this actually brings a bigger question to mind for folks to be aware of. I was at the Downtown Community Council last week, and I have another neighbor who calls me and emails me all the time when something's not quite right. And sometimes you think, oh, he's just crazy, right? Because he's calling me all the time. And his issue was that there are all these construction projects popping up all over downtown, and nobody really knows they're going on. And it seems like there's a basic level of notice that is required when these kind of things happen. And so, of course, I listened to him, and I wanted to believe that the city did the right thing. But what ended up actually proving to be true, and this was a case where I had emailed Mr. Abbott and said, hey, and Mr. Weaver, we have paint on the road downtown on 3rd Avenue that they're surveying. They're going to do stuff. And the report back I got was, nobody at the meeting knows. There's nothing coming. But there was literally paint on the ground. Comes the construction project, and people's businesses are being shut down, and nobody knows what's going on. And this happened in very early August, before I went on my trip. And so it was very interesting when I came back Monday at the community council meeting, because Russ, the individual who got the information from me, who was calling and complaining and calling and complaining, actually finally had the municipal permits in his hand that were issued for the project. They were issued on August the 28th, 3 weeks after the project was started. Right? And so even the Muni wasn't notified that these projects were going on. And the permits were issued after the fact. Right? And so how are people supposed to know what's happening in their neighborhoods if these projects are just coming through and nobody is being told, not even the city? And so this is a problem that you're referencing, separate from the plowing. It's like the moon between 9th and 10th, 10th and 11th, 11th and 12th between Cordova and Gamble Street right now. And it's a moon pit potholes that are super deep. I'm getting lots of complaints. And as for snow removal at the diverters, I asked that very question because these new diverters have bike lane pass-throughs, right? But the standard practice of plowing is just to come around the corner with the grade arm. And so who is going to be responsible for keeping open those pathways that are supposed to be our new bike boulevard? And this project that's this bike boulevard diverter, literally nobody knew. And it's 2 lots from my house. Nobody knew. So that's a problem. Thank you.
What's going to happen when I get my horse and buggy and start letting my horse eat the grass in the front yard? What are you guys going to do then?
I will come out and say hi to your horse.
Thank you, Bud. It's good to see you again, sir.
Yeah, you too. And Chief, what I meant was...
Mr. Dyson's down here has got a comment question, Bud.
Pardon?
Mr. Dyson's got a comment.
I'm glad you're chief. I'm glad you were appointed chief. That's what I meant.
Bud, Fred's down there.
Yes, sir. I'm going to be here 30 years from now, too. Thank you. I'm glad you're there, too. At least we got a couple of cool heads up here. You got any questions? You got any new guns or anything? Any machine guns?
We don't discuss those.
Huh?
We don't discuss those, Bud. We'll talk later.
Yeah, right.
Take care.
I just want to say thank you for coming.
Okay, you're welcome.
That completes our consent agenda and persons to be heard. So we're now down to the next item of business would be
Mr. Chair.
item, yes, ma'am.
Before we get into our agenda, I know the police chief is very busy, but I was wondering if I could have a moment of personal privilege.
Absolutely, Amy.
Thank you very much. Chief, how are you?
Come visit us.
Chief Dahl, we love to, whenever we get the opportunity to kind of get a download from you, I know you've had a very busy week. I've been noticing a lot of Nixle alerts with a lot of shootings. It would appear to be homicides. I think by my count this week we're at 3 or 5, somewhere in there, but it seems pretty substantial. Do you have any comments on the activity? You know what I'm starting to get really worried about? We've had so many homicides. How is the homicide unit faring, frankly?
I think the homicide unit's doing well. We're looking at making sure that there's appropriate staffing in there to handle the caseload.
Okay. I don't know how to broach this, frankly, but when we have a city our size that has as many homicides as we've had this week, well, I'm calling them homicides. I see shootings where people die. Classify them however you will. Is there any words or guidance or concerns you have being the police chief?
Well, yeah, obviously, anytime we have violence happening in the city, I'm concerned. I think everybody at the police department is concerned. I think with the events that we've had specifically this week, what I would tell people is that the 2 events that you're referring to, we believe they're contained. We believe that the people involved in them, were known to each other. We don't think they're random. The event this afternoon, homicide detectives are working on. They're working hard on it actually right now as we speak. We have a person in custody that detectives are speaking to. We don't believe that there's any outstanding threat to public safety. And we will, if that changes, we'll let the public know right away. We'll also let the public know if there are any other people that we're looking for or any other information specifically that we're seeking. And the one thing I always throw out is if anybody in the public knows people involved in these 2 events, has any information about them, has surveillance video from the area that they think is relevant, please call us. We're always happy to get assistance from the public, and I think this week we've been getting pretty good assistance from them.
Yeah, and I would like to follow up on that portion. I do appreciate APD pushing out those Nixle alerts because at least in one instant, the police department indicated that it was somebody who responded to a Nixle alert who was able to help you apprehend an individual you were looking for. So I think that interaction between the police department and the public clearly is helping in your policing endeavors. The second question I wanted to ask you about, it's something that I'm hearing about more and more from either people who have seen it or said they've seen it, but I'm getting very concerned about a rise in vigilantism. This isn't something that normally is put in our reports. I don't know if the APD even discloses it, frankly, but it was brought to my attention by someone who witnessed the event this week down at Brother Francis Shelter that there were 2 individuals dressed all in black with pipes, and they had gone and they had beaten a couple of individuals, and they were yelling things about get out of here and all that kind of stuff. Are you aware of reports of vigilantism that has creeped up recently?
I'm not aware of a specific report. I had not heard of the incident that you're talking about. I have heard some rumors of it, and the one thing I would caution people against is taking matters into their own hands in that manner. I would much rather, if residents have information on a specific crime or a problem in a neighborhood or someplace in town that they call APD, even people that have good intentions that get involved in something like that can end up becoming the suspects in a criminal act, and we don't want that. So we would much prefer that they contact us. The department's busy always, but we do have a priority system for addressing those things, and if there's an emergent problem like that, we have, I feel like, a pretty good response to those things. So
We appreciate that, and I think all of us sitting here, nobody wants to see that. Vigilantism, I think, is when our society starts to devolve, and I don't think anybody wants to see that. And I understand if those incidents happen, they're going to be classified as an assault or something of that nature. So this is really going to be hard for you to track, but I think it's something that we need to be aware of. So I'm hoping if you hear about that, I don't know how you get it out there to your officers, but this is something that we really, as lawmakers, need to understand if it's happening in our community. And I don't know how you're going to classify it. Like I said, there's not a box you check, but it would be helpful if you could think of a way. And if you see something like this, have people bring it to your attention, just so you can kind of see if this is a trend that actually is evolving or if it's just in the rumor mill category.
I can talk to the command staff about that. You're right, there's not a simple tracking mechanism. I think that fortunately we're at a point where there aren't so many events that they're difficult to track. So if something like that does come up, it should be a little bit easier to keep tabs on. I'm not, like I said, I'm not aware of a specific one at this point, but we can put the word out that it's a concern and for people to report it up the chain.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Whittleton has a question for you, sir. Mr. Whittleton?
Yes, sir.
It just popped in my head. I'm curious, and it's really sad to have to ask this question, but do you have the resources to handle more than one homicide investigation on top of the other?
We do. It can be a stretch depending on the nature of the scene. Typically, the crime scene processing can be pretty significant as far as the resource drain. The detective unit that handles homicides, we're looking at adding some staffing to that right now. We're going through the process that takes a little bit of time to select new detectives and put them back there, but that's actually underway now, and we want to make sure that it's staffed appropriately. But when the events start to stack up, we have an on-call rotation system for crime scene processing, and if we have more than one event at a time, we just move to the next group and call them out next in the rotation. They typically are up for crime scene processing for a month-long period, but we can call the other teams in as well. So we do have the ability to handle multiple events, but obviously if they stack up, it becomes somewhat of a resource drain.
All right, thank you.
There are no other questions. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll get started with the balance of the agenda. The beeper will go off when your time's up. Okay, thank you. We're now down to item 13A. Mr. Rivera, there was a motion the last time we met, according to the clerk, to approve this item. You want to make a motion to substitute the S version of 2017-51S.
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ask unanimous consent. So we now have the S, that was approved, Madam Clerk. We now have the S version in front of us. Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe this is set for continued public hearing. Should we do that first before we start
We can do that
deliberation?
first.
All right. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, did we agree to continue the public hearing? Would you look at the minutes the last time you said, did you look and see that we had agreed to continue the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Just checking with the clerk because Heidi will. Public hearing on this item is now open. If you wish to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record, spell your last name, tell us what part of town you live in. You'll have 3 minutes. And this thing will flash red, hopefully. Anyone that wants to testify on this item, this is item 2015-51S, deals with youth representation on the Anchorage Assembly. You have purple on today. Did you have it on yesterday, too?
I just have this one shirt.
Okay.
Hey, Dick, excuse me, just quickly, point of information. I think you read 2015 dash, so I think it's 2017.
It's 2017-51S.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, my name is Andy Holloman. I'm on the Anchorage School Board, but not appearing in that capacity before you. But I want to encourage you strongly to consider adopting this. Part of the reason I'm here as a school board member is we've had a youth member in an advisory capacity for years, and the obvious thing is they bring a channel of communication to you. It's a filtered and considered opinion by a student who knows they're representing other students and talks to other students. But it also provides a channel of communication out from the assembly because that student goes and talks to other people in other schools and other meetings. No one is going to come here and be a direct liaison to you that isn't also active in a lot of other ways that help to get the message out. Two, I personally experienced this as someone, North Carolina, when I was a teenager, which was decades ago, had about 8 or 9 cities that had local youth councils that had elected representatives and a channel to state government, to the local government. And collectively, we actually organized a nonprofit statewide confederation of youth councils called Youth Councils of North Carolina, Inc. I served as a state treasurer on that when I was 17. It was entirely made up of high school students, and we actually drafted a bill, lobbied for it, and passed a bill that created an official state government agency at that level composed of elected youth to represent young people to the state of North Carolina. So in other locations, this has been going on for a long, long time. The other critical thing is that it actively and directly engages young people in the work you're doing, and in just a real critical way. You might think of it as the of the Assembly's school business partnership. In addition to everything you do, and your support for education in Anchorage is outstanding. We appreciate it. But this actually involves you directly interacting with students in a way that's constructive for them, and I think will bring benefit to you as well. So I hope you do look favorably on this. Thank you.
Question from this gentleman? Good to see you again, sir. Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Spell your last name, give us your first name, and tell us what part of town you live in.
My name is David Holmes, Holmes, and I live in South Anchorage.
Welcome, sir.
So I've been part of the youth commission since I was in middle school, and now I'm in high school. I'm a sophomore, and I've had so many opportunities open up for me being in the youth commission, and I'm so happy that I've been given this opportunity. And I've never been this involved in the city all my life until now. I've helped out in the community so much. I've met so many new and amazing people. And I think that having a youth representative on the city council, I already said it, didn't I? But having a youth member on the city council would be just an amazing thing to have. We would have a whole new range of input. We would be able to help see what decisions will be affecting upcoming generations in the city. And I just think it would be a great opportunity to any who wanted to come and fulfill this role. And I would like to thank you all for giving us this opportunity to help you out and to just have our own say in what goes on in the city.
Thank you. Questions from assembly members? There don't appear to be any questions. Thank you, sir. Anybody else wishing to testify, please come forward. Hi, your name, please?
Hello, my name is Elijah Stover, S-T-O, V as in Victor, E-R.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead.
I think it's very important that we have a youth representative on our assembly. It's very important that our voice is heard. We've been born and raised Alaskan, and we have part in our community, and to be connected and know that you're supported and able to have an empowered voice and opinion to make things better in our community is really important for young people so that they can continue to make positive changes in their own communities and then our bigger community. Thank you for hearing my voice.
Questions from Mr. Whittleton has a question. Mr. Whittleton.
Are you on the Youth Advisory Committee?
Yes, sir, I am.
That's good. And how many times, my understanding with the Youth Advisory Committee is really your chief task is to advise the Assembly and the administration. Is that correct? It's in the kind of write-up on what you do.
We do a little advisory, and we work on our own projects mostly and bring it within the community and have that support from people.
What's good. I mean, the people I've talked to who are involved with it are very lively and well-spoken as yourself. But in my almost a year and a half on here, I've never, ever heard any comments on anything from the Youth Advisory Committee except for this issue. Whereas there's so many things that we do up here where we even justify them going, this is for the future generations. But the future generations, you, we don't hear anything. And so I think we have a wonderful avenue for youth to take part, and that is the commission that you're on. And I would expect to hear from the Youth Advisory Commission virtually every meeting. There's some issue on here that affects you. So I look forward to your involvement and the entire commission's involvement going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have our voice heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clear for the record. Spell your last name. So what part of town you live in.
Hey, Rainier Herksig, and I live in, I guess, East Anchorage now. I just moved. But I vote in Eagle River. Okay. All right, so I am just here to echo all of the comments that people have made in support of this ordinance. I also wanted to respond to Mr. Whittleton's question a little bit more. As I believe I've stated to the Assembly before, we of course love to respond to Assembly ordinance and things like that come before the Assembly. And this is the first ordinance that an Assembly member has sent to us for review. And though I understand it would be great for the Anchorage Youth Advisory Commission to make a comment on every single ordinance that we thought was important, unfortunately, since our body only meets once a month and we have many other responsibilities to both the municipality as well as to the government of the municipality, as well as to the Assembly, we're unable to look through all of the Assembly ordinances. We also are not sent that packet. We haven't really gone over it, and as the Anchorage Youth Advisory Commission, we were under the impression that if any of the ordinances needed a youth voice supporting them, that an Assembly member would send it to us. just as Assemblymember Flynn sent this one to us. And we also think that given that we're unable to look at all the Assembly ordinances before the Assembly at each meeting, we think that this representative, this youth representative on the Assembly is a great way for the Youth Advisory Commission to be more informed on the actions and procedures of the Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilton has a question, sir.
Oh,
John?
I'm sorry, it's just not a question. I was just make sure that there's no confusion to anyone who's listening or any youth or adults, but the Assembly information is not really sent to anyone. Generally, we get binders full of it, but it is posted online and available to everyone. You can peruse the agenda and then find all the details that we're presented with at any time. So anyone in the public, I hope you will be involved and will pay attention to those things, and not just things that some Assembly member happens to send to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steele has a question. Mr. Steele?
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I think having a youth member on the Assembly will help with that communication, and I will make sure that whoever that person is, that I'll talk to them about that, because that would be a great boon to us to have a youth of the community look that over and get back to us on any number of things that are on our agenda. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Ma'am, there are no other questions. Thank you. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Welcome to the meeting, ma'am.
Hi, thank you. So my name is Lindsay Hajduk, that's H-A-J-D-U-K, and I live in Spenard, proud of it. I also serve as the director of the Anchorage Youth Development Coalition, and we are a coalition of over 60 organizations and businesses in this town that came together 17 years ago. Our purpose is to promote positive youth development practices and offer training for youth workers, youth programs, and organizations. This approach supports youth to develop the abilities, skill sets, and mindsets they need to be healthy and happy individuals, and also grow into adults that contribute to their families, to schools, and our community in positive ways. So with this purpose in mind, our coalition members are very pleased and very supportive to have the Anchorage Assembly take up this ordinance to create a youth representative seat. Further, we appreciate the Assembly members' collaborative effort with the Youth Advisory Commission to craft the amendments over these past months to include best practices and better inform the effort. The AYDC Coalition supports the approval of this ordinance, and we urge Assembly members to vote in support of it as well. It's heartening to see the Anchorage Assembly take a lead on incorporating meaningful youth engagement in our city. The youth representative position will bring visibility and welcome youth to every Assembly meeting, and it will truly show that youth are capable, are valued, and that they simply matter. The youth rep will also bolster the good work of the Youth Advisory Commission and its role to continue to inform local government. In cities across the country, youth involvement in government results in better policy decisions because youth bring new perspectives, compassion, and they ask tough questions to expand important discussions. It's really a two-way learning opportunity, not just for the youth and Assembly members, but also for the public. Really, everyone benefits. And as adults, we often expect youth and teens to act like adults, but we don't always afford them the same respect or opportunities to build those skills and abilities that are necessary. So as written, the youth representative position would allow young people meaningful opportunities to engage in our community and also develop future leaders to serve our community. So if the goal is for youth and adults to thrive and not just survive in these positions, I offer a few recommendations for consideration. One is mentorship and support, and making sure that, of course, youth are capable, but just like anyone else, they need to be set up to succeed. So an orientation and mentorship model would be key. Having an alternate youth representative, because when people are part of a team, they are often more successful. And support for the Youth Advisory Commission. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions from Assembly members? There are no questions. Thank you. Tim?
No? Okay.
It's more a comment. Yeah, you brought some really good points. It's going to help us as well. Sometimes our focus is not on youth, and having a youth member and having them there, it's going to help us with our communication skills as well. So good comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no other questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Hello, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Karen Zeman. That's Z-E-M-A-N. I live in South Addition. Thank you for this opportunity. So I work at an organization called Spirit of Youth. It's a nonprofit that recognizes youth and their contributions around the state. I've actually worked with youth now for over 25 years. I'm constantly astounded by their intelligence, passion, and energy, and I think those are a few things we could use some more of. In the 2015 Anchorage Youth Risk Behavior Survey, only 54% of high school students agreed or strongly agreed that they felt like they mattered in their communities. So that means 46% of Anchorage teens don't feel like they matter in our community. Youth in Anchorage face a number of barriers to health and education outcomes, where paradoxically, they're not given a voice or a seat at the table to address these issues that impact them directly. Minors have very little access to social capital and therefore miss out on community benefits such as trust, reciprocity, information sharing, and social networks. There are approximately 72,000 Anchorage residents under the age of 18, which makes this cohort an incredible resource. Young people see the world as a place of possibility. Communities which have civically educated and engaged youth and young adults are better able to take a progressive approach to issues. It's essential that we thoughtfully educate and empower the next generation of Anchorage leaders, not to mention the fact that 16 and 17-year-olds work and pay taxes. Transportation, land use, gas prices, parks, public safety, these are all issues that affect Anchorage teens. I urge you to pass this ordinance and show Anchorage youth that they matter to you. Thank you.
Any questions, Ms. Lemmy, members? There don't appear to be any questions. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Koford, K-O-F-O-R-D, and I live in Midtown in the Rogers Park Community Council area. I am also the executive director for Anchorage Youth Court, and I have spoken to this body before about the ability of our youth to rise to the occasion and to take the responsibility that is asked of them when we do ask that of them. You've heard some of the data from Karen and Lindsay regarding youth in our area, and I can also tell you from having a board of directors that is half teenagers that youth do add quite a bit when they're given a leadership voice. There have been many times on our board throughout our almost 30 years of existence in which youth have been fundamental to our decision-making processes and to program decisions, and it has always been to our benefit. If by now you don't believe that youth voices should be respected, then of course you are going to vote no, because why would you give someone time in your 5-hour-long meeting in your hours and hours of work if you don't respect what they have to say? But if you do respect what they have to say, then I would urge you to pass this. I once heard a wise man say that decisions are made by those who show up. But to show up, you have to know when and where to go, and you have to believe that your vote, your word, means something. And our youth do not believe that their word means something with this body. And that is a shame, because you and I and all the other adults in Anchorage would benefit from including their voice and creating an avenue for youth to raise questions and voice their opinions. A youth representative will serve as a conduit for other youth, easing the path for communication from youth to you and from you to our youth. It will also set an example for community councils. It was considered several years ago to add mandatory youth spots on community councils, and this body, with mostly different faces, did not pass that. They wanted to leave it up to the community councils. I believe 3 community councils have spots for youth on them. You have the opportunity to lead by example in this situation. You can set an example that youth voices are an asset, not a burden, and thus create an entire grid across our city for youth to participate and add to our civic discourse. Thank you.
Question from Assembly members. Mr. Constant, sir.
Yeah, hi there. Just wanted to really figure out if you really just said that if you don't vote for this, you don't respect youth.
No, I was saying that if you don't, then you certainly won't be. But I'm not saying that if you vote no, that you don't respect youth, because you might just not think that this is the correct avenue.
No,
I disagree strongly with that,
Yeah,
but that is not what I was saying.
There don't appear any other questions. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else wish to testify, please come in front of us? Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body? Mr. Rivera?
Move to approve the S version.
So which one's the second of you two?
Second, Eric can, because he helped write it.
Okay. There, Madam Clerk, you got that down? Okay. Mr. Rivera, it's your ordinance, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This ordinance has been a long time in the making. Countless individuals have helped to weigh in, do the research, and craft what I believe to be, based on the research, one of the best laws in the country regarding youth representation in local government. Since we last saw this ordinance at the start of our quote-unquote summer, the Youth Advisory Commission and Anchorage Youth Development Coalition have put together 2 reports researching the most effective ways to integrate youth voices in local government. And based on this research, we will be joining, if approved, a small number of cities which have similar laws on the books. And these cities have found that including youth voices is not only informative, but helps craft better laws. The research had one main theme. For this youth representative to thrive, we must provide the basic supports for he or she to do so. So with that, I'd like to move Rivera Amendment number 1, all of which were crafted based on this research and best practices.
Felix, before you do that, I've got a couple of some members that would like to talk, and then let's come back to your amendments, okay?
Absolutely.
You would. Mr. Constant, you're first, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to hear, or speak briefly with Mr. Martinez, who's the Youth Advisory Commission Director, staff person for the meeting, please. Yep, George Martinez, thank you. You're the next contestant.
Okay. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Hi there, George. So something I heard at the work session that we had, and something that I heard again tonight, something that I'd like you to contemplate and figure out how this fits into the mix. That before tonight, or before this question, the Youth Commission was created, and it's functioning, and has an opportunity to communicate to the Assembly at any given time. But in some ways it appears, and I'm new at all this, but it appears that hasn't happened. And so I actually, more than a question, maybe have a challenge to you, is that once this happens, one way or the other, that the Advisory Commission does set up a process by which they advise this person on a regular basis relative to the issue, so those communications are heard, so the questions about, well, where have you been, don't actually have any merit when we get to the matter. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Would you like me to return to the
Please,
comment?
yeah, please.
The Youth Commission was sunsetted. The current Youth Commission that we have was sunsetted in 2012. The city of Anchorage has not had a Youth Commission until we brought it back. The Youth Commission was brought back 2 years ago. So culturally speaking, as it was identified by one of the previous speakers, there are lots of new faces to all of us. And so culturally speaking, I think we're all at the starting point of learning how to do exactly what you described together, and I think this is a really good starting point. Thank you.
There don't appear any other questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Rivera.
Okay, so I move Rivera Amendment number 1.
Second.
Mr. Rivera, go through your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there are 5 amendments, parts to this amendment, rather. First,
segments in your amendment.
yes, thank you. First adds a provision regarding orientation and mentorship, which is something that both my colleagues and folks who testified earlier brought up. This provision is somewhat vague and open-ended to allow the chair and the assembly to work with the Youth Advisory Commission and AYDC, the Anchorage Youth Development Coalition, to determine what type of mentorship model works best and what should be included in orientation of the youth representative. Second, it adds a provision which allows a potential candidate for the youth rep to shadow a sitting assembly member to determine if they're really a good fit for this or not. Third, it adds a provision which allows for the Youth Advisory Commission to nominate an alternate. The alternate will share materials with the youth rep and will act as backup in case of the youth rep's absence. The provisions of attendance outlined in the ordinance will not change. And if the youth rep seat becomes vacant because of attendance issues, the alternate will not assume the position. Instead, the Youth Advisory Commission must make another nomination to the chair. Fourth, it adds a provision to clarify that the youth rep is able to attend and participate in committee meetings. And lastly, it amends the term of service to 6 months to 1 year and maintaining the 1 year maximum. And again, these were all amendments based on the research and advice from the Youth Advisory Commission and adults who work with youth. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have some questions for you. Mr. Rivera, let me just state that there is no transportation involved with this. Is that correct, or are you going to pick them and take them around? In other words, nothing here guarantees transportation here. Whoever we select will have to get here themselves, as every other assembly member does.
That is a correct interpretation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Melissa France.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Mr. Rivera.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Felix, on the shadowing the assembly member, is that for prospective representatives then?
That is correct.
So it could occur concurrently? There could be several going on? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions on Mr. Rivera's amendment from assembly members? No questions, Mr. Dunbar? Anything on this amendment? Okay. Let's vote on the amendment. Please vote. Everybody in? That is approved. We now have the amended document in front of us, 2017-51S as amended. Mr. Rivera, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will save my final comments for later.
Okay. Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very briefly, I was prepared to support this ordinance when it was first brought forward by Mr. Flynn a number of months ago, but my colleagues identified some concerns with it, and I want to thank Mr. Rivera and Mr. Croft, and of course Mr. Gates, for their hard work in crafting and improving this ordinance. I do think it's very important to have this kind of youth representative. It's important to have this kind of youth voice. And again, I want to thank you for bringing it forward, and I urge my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Wilton, sir.
I guess I had some leading questions during the public hearing. But I would say I am very excited to have more involvement by youth members. I'm glad to hear so after 2 years the advisory committee is geared up and they are ready to go online like a typical citizen would do and read what's coming up, and if something interests them to comment on it. I really look forward to that. It's very important. I had the great opportunity this summer, just before graduation, a young woman from South called and said, "Hey, I graduated, I'll be here all summer, need any help?" And I said, sure. And I had a project very important to me that she helped on, and she made presentations to community councils, treated very respectfully there, and gathered lots of good information there. She interviewed people in the administration, people in the planning department. She called many people in other states to see how they do the things we were looking at, and she wrote up summaries of those things. And my biggest disappointment is that when it's all introduced and passed, she may be out of town because she's in college. So she did great work, and I look forward to more involvement like that from people and from youth members. But I look at this and I say, what is this? Okay, this is a great opportunity, and it would be a great opportunity to anyone. And I think not only because this is where all the empty seat is and it has all the candy and water, but I think anyone who comes to assembly meetings and they don't like just getting 3 minutes, hallelujah, sitting over here, they'll get way more time than that. They could go long-winded like I am about to do right now. So it is a good opportunity, but is this the Is this a proper role? I mean, I look at it as kind of a pretend assembly seat. You know, they get to do a lot of it, but not everything. Is it their only way to participate in the city government? And I don't think so. And we got, as part of support for this, one thing had this picture of a ladder, okay? And this is like the steps of youth involvement, and they want to get to that top rung, and at the bottom is young people are manipulated. Well, we don't want that. That's not how we operate here. Somewhere in their middle, young people are consulted and informed. Okay, well, that's pretty good. And at the top, young people and adults share decision-making. And that's the top rung. Well, reading descriptions of this, not only in the ordinance, but also interpretations in statements of support that we got in our packet here, it's basically an educational and ceremonial position, and that is coming from Youth Advisory Commission members. So to me, that puts it halfway up this ladder. So how do we get them to the very top position where they're truly taking part in decision-making in Anchorage? Well, that's our community councils. They've been in existence since the municipality was formed. They are something I've been involved with for decades, and I feel like the work was very worthwhile, and community councils do good things, and that is our entry level to city government. Can youth participate? They absolutely can. The new ordinance and community councils can allow youth members on their board. You don't have to be on the board to participate. And I'll tell you, there are a few people I've talked to, some of the young members of the commission on this, that said, well, one, they had never heard of community councils, but they had disparaged them as not being truly useful or as important to them. And I think they need to go and experience them. And if they don't have the, I guess, the gumption to go to a community council meeting and say, hey, I'd like to be on your board, they probably don't belong up here either. So that's the place to start, is your community councils. We have an avenue for everyone, including youth, to have very effective impact on our government, and that is through your community councils. And also you do through your Youth Advisory Committee, and I'm glad to hear that'll be wound up. So I'm not ready to go with this. I think we have other avenues where everyone, including youth, can be very effective in influence the assembly. And I look forward to them participating in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Croft, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is Mr. Holloman from the school board still here? Could I missed doing it before. Can I ask you a quick question at the podium? And while he's coming up, because the school board has basically implemented what we're considering, and so I'm going to ask you when you get here, Andy, whether what the school board's experience has been and whether you've had significant problems with having that student member.
I haven't seen what I would call a problem. The input tends to be on the low side directly, as far as I would say that they never weigh in on every issue. And I think that's part of it, is to take something that matters to you to a certain degree to come to these meetings and be part of the process unless you are engaged in it in a real regular and formal way. And so I think that's been the value of it. We have some students that they know this is part of their job, and they are doing this process away from the meeting as well as at the meeting, and they show up at the meeting. And not too many people will sit through all those meetings unless they're a formal part of the process. But it certainly has never been disruptive, and the amount of time devoted to it has always been rather small.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your service.
Can I follow up on that?
Yeah, just a couple more comments. Or did you have more? Oh, I'm sorry. John, did?
Eddie, stay here. He's got a question for you. Eric, you want to continue?
Well, if Mr. Welton has questions for Andy, then that's fine. I'll wait.
Maybe it's
John,
not
do you have a
exactly.
question?
It might be more of a related comment, I think, and because I appreciate Andy's views on the school board seat, and I think that's important, and it sounds like it works well, and I think this will pass overwhelmingly this evening, and it'll work well here. I just think we're short-circuiting an existing system that is very good, but the school board doesn't have quite what we have. The school board doesn't have a community council system which is designed to do exactly what the youth want to do, which is have a feedback system to the assembly. Municipal government does. And I don't know that but we also have the assembly, and municipal side has the Youth Advisory Committee. So we have a very good conduit for input that I don't know if there's parallels to the community councils or Youth Advisory Committee at the school board.
And I only heard about this 8 or 9 weeks ago when I came onto the board, and I am supposed to be the liaison this year. And that was my first suggestion, is they really start with community councils, and then you could just take the assembly by force. Was the, but I think there's a timing to it. Obviously, this is going to assist in it, but you're right, they're there. Most of them, I think, would be open to having students show up. I think there are a lot of different pieces to this. Ideally, you'd build it from the bottom up, but I think doing some of it from the middle and the top and the bottom all at once makes a lot of sense as well. Fortunately, our youth are not politically savvy enough to take us that way yet, but this might help.
Is that all, Mr. Wilton?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Mr. Croft?
Yeah, just a couple more comments, and then I know there are other people in the queue. The main drivers on these improvements, I think, both in the amendment and in the version you see before you from before, is Mr. Rivera and Mr. Gates. My main function was keeping it alive from Flynn to Rivera, but have also had other input in it, and certainly a very strong supporter. I think this is a great idea. Before the school board's only had this participatory membership in the last couple of years. They had on their books that this would be the process, but they hadn't really been doing it. In my time there, we would have reports from our student advisory group, and they were helpful, but it was mainly about what they were doing. They're such an active, bright group that it was, as you heard from the Youth Advisory Commission, they're mainly talking about the things they're doing in the community, their plans. It's very hard to be a committee reacting to a committee. And when you're meeting monthly and we're meeting basically bi-monthly, to just send sort of their opinions over the transom on everything we're doing, to not be here for the flow of the debate, to not see all the data, it's a very... Their comments when I was on the school board at the beginning of the meeting were helpful, but it really wasn't going down our agenda saying their viewpoints. It was a lot of the things they were doing, the activities they were taking, the projects we were working together on. But really that voice is the difference between an advisory committee and a participatory person. You get much more of the perspective that at least I'm looking for when you allow them to participate. Now, there's all kinds of good practical and legal reasons why they don't vote in a binding way, but they participate, and we hear them. And as Andy said, not on everything and not so it slows the process down, but I think this is a much more effective way to get that input than parallel advisory committees who tend to get and manage their own business. And I've now judged a couple of high school debates, seen a lot of the UAA debate crew, and as an older person, it is embarrassing how much better they are than us. Often, not always, but often. And I wish that the level of debate that I uniformly see in high school debating and always see at the UAA level would have been there in my legislative experience and almost any of the other legislative communities. They really bring a tremendously high level of preparation and debate. I think we'll be very pleased with what we get from this. I don't think it'll slow us down, and I expect it to speed us up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. Mr. Wilton, sir. Okay. Mr. Steele, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I got dropped somehow.
No, actually, you did get dropped off. Push your button, I'll get to you.
All right.
Mr. Steele?
Yeah, my point is I did serve on the school board, and we did have a couple of different school board student reps, and Eric's comments are accurate, and I think a lot of it depends on how we interact with the student, and the other thing that we have to realize is that this body is not their only interest in life and not their only activity in life, and they have schoolwork to do as well. And so we can't expect the level of preparedness that hopefully we do, but it's going to be a good learning experience. I just hope we don't burn them out by demanding more of them than their life would allow them to participate. But it's a great experience for all of us, and we'll all be the better for it, hopefully. But again, I don't want to. We need to be empathetic as to what their situation in life is as well. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Costa and then Mr. Dyson.
Thank you. And I just wanted to respond briefly to something that you said, Mr. Weddleton, and that is that in the concept of short-circuiting the system that we have, in particular that the school board doesn't have community councils. In my experience, and probably in the charter, the code, the school board is actually an entity that the community councils are able to provide advice and kind of communicate with. And in fact, one of my biggest regrets of my many, many years at the Fairview Council was that the only time we saw school board members show up was right around election time. And we really did desire to have participation. In fact, it was the very short-term member, Cameron Perez-Verdia, who showed up regularly, and he was the only one over all the years. And so it's an option for the school board, and I know that the Fairview Community Council has spoken on a number of matters before the school district. So.
Thank you, sir. Just for historical reference, last time I rewrote the community council, that was an option we'd get sent to the community councils to have 16-year-olds on their body. A bunch of them dropped it out. We don't write the bylaws. We send them suggestions. They have to adopt them. Some of the community councils do not want people below the age of 18 because they said, hey, this deals with taxes. They don't pay property taxes. So that's the reason some of the community councils did not include 16-year-olds. Mr. Dyson?
Yeah, thank you. This debate has done what it should. It's changed minds and informed us. I came opposed. I heard the testimony and thought I'm very much in favor. And at the end of the day, Mr. Weddleton has carried the day, and I would like to identify with his remarks. I talked to my predecessor in this seat, who is scary bright, has a lot of credibility with me, and he said every intern he got through the present thing that we're involved in, I think they come from the university, was a drone that wouldn't work, and thought that it was an easy way to get the requirements for a degree. I just suggest to the process that'll select this person that you really find somebody that's got a passion and wants to work and is reasonably bright in order to make this work, and so on. My own experience with interns has been great. It was solely Mr. Dunbar who came and worked with me for a session, and also is very bright and capable, and he did great work. And his work is now a part of the state code and is making a significant difference in people's lives. And if that's what got him involved in the public process, I'm glad to have had a small part. My guess is he would have been regardless, and I can claim no credit. But one of the probably more significant things any of us will do is to mentor others, and to be running a formal or informal training for the next generation's leaders. And looking back, it looks like I've been pretty successful at that. Never intended to be. We're just some folks that providentially came along and have worked with me or gone on to be pretty significant. I can't be proud of it because I had no active part in making it happen, but I'm delighted. And I would encourage all of us to look out for opportunities to mentor others, disciple them, if you will. I'm hoping that we can change our own rules so that each of us could have an intern. And I inquired if we could have a little bit of a stipend, at least to pay them for gas money and incidental expenses and so on and so forth. That's not possible. I would suggest that our total budget for each of us wouldn't change, but some flexibility to do that with an intern could be helpful, and I see no downside. Anyways, I appreciate what you're doing. Motivation is good, and thank you, Mr. Whittleson.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Ms. LaFrance, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with John's points about the role of community councils and how we do direct citizens to work with their council. One thing that really concerns me is hearing, some of the testimony and what you mentioned, Mr. Chair, about how some community councils aren't open to the involvement in youth, and that makes me more inclined to support this ordinance, which I understand has tremendous community support, and I think it is a very good scholarship opportunity for the youth, so I will be voting in support.
Okay. By the way, I want the body to keep in mind where this person is sitting is right down there. We have a seat next to you, John.
You know what, I would welcome them. I mean, I'm not speaking against youth participation. I just think we have a very good system that I think is a tragedy to short circuit and not give good credit
community councils
to.
are very good organizations, but like I said, we sent that out in the last rewrite, and the problem was many of them did not want to go there. They were comfortable at 18. So that's the way the bylaws are written. The community council has to create their own bylaws. We sent them suggestions. They did not want to go down to 16-year-olds. So
Some perhaps. So at any rate, thank you.
we could not, as one person was saying earlier, we could not dictate to the community councils what their bylaws should look like. We can help them recommend it, but not dictate. Mr. Gates, sir, do you have a comment?
Mr. Trenny, I was going to speak to the fact that community councils include residents, and the definition is persons who are 18 years of age and older, and I was also going to point to the model bylaws that we have in our code, but you've hit that point already, so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dombowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a clarifying question. When we look at page 204, it's page 266 of our packet, item 9A, subsection 2, when it says may be recognized for comment by the presiding officer of the assembly and participate in questioning witnesses and discussing issues. Number one, unless we're quasi-judicial, we don't have witnesses. We have public members that testify.
Witness was a bad term, yes.
Yeah, we don't have witnesses
No, we
unless
don't.
it's quasi-judicial. So that leads me to, is the expectation of the maker to have youth members on quasi-judicial panels?
Thank you, Ms. Dombowski, for the question, and that's you beat me to the punch. I actually was going to ask Mr. Gates to clarify the definition of witness. So the intent is to allow the youth to question those who come up to testify and during debate.
But not during quasi-judicial meetings? Well, they're not meetings, actually. They're actually hearings. So sometimes we sit as a legal body, hearing testimony, people are sworn in under oath, and what legal implications would there be if we did?
That's a good question for Mr. Gates. So the way that this is currently written, the youth representative would be able to sit on every body that is not an executive session.
Okay, quasi-judicial is not executive session. So I would like legal analysis of that question.
Addressing me here, Mr. Fossey.
Either.
I would say that I remember this language was drafted last spring. At the time, I believe the intent was allowing the youth representative to question people who come to testify here in public hearings. It could include, as Ms. Dombowski, opined, I guess, a quasi-judicial hearing. It doesn't still give the youth representative any power or any vote on a decision in a quasi-judicial hearing. It still excludes them from executive sessions. I guess I would say that might have been a poor choice of wording here, and you could change it if you wanted to by an amendment. Maybe Mr. Fossey has something to add.
Yeah, through the chair, I would agree with Mr. Gates' comments. I would also note that Representative Rivera's Amendment 1B expressly pointed out that the youth member would be able to join committees, participate in work sessions and informal meetings, but would not attend or participate in executive sessions. If you wanted to clarify this one way or the other, you could potentially add shall not attend or participate in executive sessions or quasi-judicial hearings, and that would
I think that would be
resolve
cleaner.
it.
Mr. Rivera, would you be amenable if I made those two amendments?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so let's just start with, I'm reading off of his Amendment 1B. After participate in executive sessions, I move that we add or quasi-judicial hearings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ask unanimous consent. That's done. We've added that in.
Thank you. And just for my, I would love to change the word witnesses because
I know.
it seems to me to indicate quasi-judicial, and I think it could lead to confusion. So, and Eric, come on, you need to help me with this. You're good at this. And question
How about just people testifying in front of
public members or public members testifying. How about that? Is that a good way to say it? Is that clear? I'm actually asking an attorney. How many attorneys does it take to get this answer? What's the easiest way you think to say it?
Between billable hours?
In questioning.
Ms. Domboski, if I may, perhaps just eliminating the word witnesses may help. So it would read, and participate in questioning and discussing issues. Or if...
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I think it's clear. Is that clear, Mr. Falsey?
That would work for me.
Wonderful. I second Felix's motion that he
Ask unanimous consent to delete the term witnesses.
Point of order. Is that grammar? In questioning and discussing issues. Do we have a grammarian here?
We lost LV a while back. We don't have a
It's
grammarian here.
proper. I have an English degree.
That was good.
It's proper.
I will trust Mr. Constant.
Point of order, at least in a previous body I've served in, you can always make an amendment that says conceptual amendment, then you're relying on the crafters to get the
Scribner.
the grammar correct.
I'm glad you're here, Mr. Dyson.
Is that permissible here, sir?
Yes.
So just a point of order. So we made a motion on that. Was there a second and a vote
There
on
was
that?
a second.
Okay.
Ask unanimous consent. See no objection. We've dropped the witnesses out of there.
All right. May I continue?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm not going to repeat a lot of what Mr. Weddleton said. I've sat through multiple public testimonies on this issue in which multiple youth members came and testified, the vast majority of which had never been to a community council meeting. I think there's something to be said when I believe in local governance at the most local level. And when we passed the community council ordinance, we left it up to each community council to define how they were going to have youth participate. And I can tell you, in my district, the 6 community councils that I have, I attend their meetings frequently, almost all of them. I've never seen an opportunity where youth have been there, which is very rare, mind you, where they're not asked to participate. As a matter of fact, many of the community councils will stop and they'll do a mini quiz, or they'll say, who are your representatives, or they'll ask them basic questions, or they'll ask, what do you think on these issues? And there are a variety of issues that our councils chose to not actually put a seat and a vote for a youth member. And the reason they chose not to do it, many times, we're talking about liquor licenses, we're talking about land use and zoning codes that have to do with liquor licenses or now marijuana establishments. And so our councils felt it was inappropriate to a large degree to have youth voting on issues such as that. You know, frankly, I heard the comments myself that if you don't support this, that you don't respect youth. And frankly, that's just an ignorant statement. And I think I hope it wasn't intended in the way it came across. But there's a couple other issues we have to think about too. So you have a youth member of the Youth Advisory Commission. From which district do they come? Is it always going to be, if we're going to assign it to one district, it should probably be downtown, frankly. But you know, that's a real question. And so for those, I I fully expect this is going to pass, but for those who mentor and are on the Youth Advisory Commission, you should really think about having districts that rotate or having kids from different areas. I am one who believes that, frankly, unlike Mr. Steele, if you're going to sit up here and you're going to debate with every member from this district or from each district that was elected, I expect you to do your homework. I expect you to attend the work sessions. I expect you to read the packet. And I expect you to participate at the same level that we're at. Now, clearly, Mr. Croft and I have seen some of the same youth that are just incredible, very articulate and smart individuals. But I am not going to circumvent my community councils or my district. I've put this question out a long time ago, and it was met with overwhelming opposition in my district. People felt if kids wanted to get involved, they absolutely were welcome to do so, and they should do so at the community council level. And to bypass that, I think, frankly, would be an affront to my district, who has advised me to vote otherwise. So I fully am with Mr. Weddleton on this one. I want to see youth engagement every single Tuesday night that we're here. We can have youth. It doesn't matter. I've seen 10-year-olds come and deliver articulate, passionate discussions, especially tennis. That one sticks out to me. So there's nothing prohibiting youth from involvement, and I personally want to hear what they have to say, absolutely. But I don't think every avenue for youth engagement has been used or utilized to its fullest potential. And I think from the testimony, as we look back over months on this topic, it is very clear that the community council avenue, which is established in charter, has been ignored. So I will not be supporting this.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Dunbar, then Mr. Rivera for final comments.
Thank you.
Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Traney, and thank you for allowing me to speak again, just very briefly. I want to talk a little bit about this community council idea. So first I would just say, I don't like it when we make perfect the enemy of the good. So I think certainly I would love if students were going to and youth were going to every community council. But we all know that that's often not the case. Every community council is different. And I can say that Pete and I, when we asked our community councils, actually there was broad support for a youth representative back when it was the previous ordinance. But I'd say practically speaking, a lot of community councils that I've experienced don't feel particularly welcoming to youth. Now again, some community councils, perhaps they are. But they're usually, in the evening with a high median age and a certain tenor and a certain level of topics and a certain length that discourages youth from participating. So I think we have to go out of our way to try to get that opinion into the public discourse. And I think this is one way to do that. And again, I would love if youth did start coming more often to community councils, but I think as all of us have experienced, it's difficult to get adults to come to community councils. There are lots of community councils that unless there is a very hot button issue, there's just a dozen people typically, some are even less. So I think that is a reason to vote against this or not support it. I think that is a little bit mistaken in its thinking. That being said, I respect John's views on this and Ms. Domboski's views as well. But I think we need to take that extra step and reach out to a community that often doesn't have its voice heard. And so again, I would urge my colleagues to support this ordinance. Thank you.
Mr. Rivera, how many people showed up to Rogers Park last night?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We probably had close to 100.
Okay.
Maybe a little
That's
more.
the community council. And there was not a highway going down their neighborhood either. They showed up because they're concerned on crime in their neighborhood.
That is correct, Mr.
Go ahead, Mr. Rivera. Final comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to thank my colleagues for this really good debate and discussion. Thank you, Mr. Steele. I want to quickly acknowledge some of the concerns my colleagues and the clerk's office has brought up, namely the youth's ability to do the job of an assembly member, and let's not kid ourselves, this is a job, and a student at the same time, and the operational effect in the clerk's office, which is already overburdened. So to address the first concern, I'd like to talk about a youth I have the pleasure of serving with on the Anchorage Youth Court Board of Directors. Her name is Bryn Morse. Bryn is 16 years old and a junior in high school. She is currently serving as a page in the U.S. Senate while preparing to graduate both high school and college at the same time. And she's also studying for the LSATs. So while Bryn certainly isn't the norm, I would posit that there are brilliant youth in each and every one of your districts who would be a perfect fit for this position. Thankfully, we also have organizations that are perfectly poised to provide the type of support to the youth representative to make his or her time successful for all parties involved. The Youth Advisory Commission and the various organizations that form up the Anchorage Youth Development Coalition are all ready to provide the necessary supports to this position. The clerk's office will not be alone in taking care of the youth representative. This will be a community effort because we all want to see this succeed, as you've heard today. Lastly, I just want to deeply thank the various organizations and individuals who have got us to this point. Support from George Martinez in the mayor's office, the Youth Advisory Commission in Rainier, the chair of the commission, Lindsay Hyjuk and the various organizations of the Anchorage Youth Development Coalition, Dean Gates, Barbara Jones, and the list goes on. I strongly urge my colleagues to vote yes on this ordinance. I know you'll be surprised by the success of this program. And lastly, as a younger individual who happens to sit next to Mr. Weddleton, I can definitely say that whoever sits in that chair will gain a lot of knowledge and wisdom. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. I didn't know you were any longer considered among the youth. Please vote on the item. That passes 8-3. Eventually. Next item in front of us is item 14A, Ordinance Hale 2017-118, Ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Sections 11.70.060 to update the Anchorage Public Transit System fare structure. Public hearing, there's an accompanying AM with it, AM 609-2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify? Please come forward, state your name clear for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what town you live in.
Any youth interested in this?
Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second. Comments from assembly members. Ms. Dombowski, ma'am.
Thank you. Through the chair to the administration, there's no C attached. It says the financial impact is expected not to be substantial. What does that mean exactly? Well, I mean, how much are we talking? We're already talking about a public transit system that costs more to run than we take in. So from fares, I mean, I want to know what not substantial means to you.
It means zero. We don't, this might make us a little bit of money, it might lose us a little bit of money, but it is not expected to change the revenue structure of the agency one way or the other. It's just a different type of fare device than what we have right now.
Ms. Dombowski, ma'am?
Yeah, okay, so are we reading the same thing? I mean, you're talking about, okay, explain it to me then, because as I was reading it, you're talking about different types of cards and making them cheaper, and you're thinking your ridership's going to go up to offset the cost? Is that what you're thinking?
Potentially. We don't, well, and I'm going to, we'll start walking up there because you're going to have to answer some of the more detailed questions.
I'm just trying to understand it.
No, I get that. We don't expect this to make a significant difference in the revenue piece that we're looking for. Abul, can you answer the question related to how this will change the sort of the customer experience?
Through the chair. Right now, we do not have a medium to do a weekly pass. We have a 30-day pass, we have a daily pass, we have a single ride ticket. We're using the existing medium. That's a piece of paper for any different type, whether it's a 30-day pass or a day pass or a single ride ticket. And we're just creating a framework for a week pass, which does not exist. It could yield dividends because some people might decide that a weekly pass is worthwhile. It may not, but time will tell.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Thank you.
No other questions, sir. Thank you. Any other Assembly member have any comments to make on this before we vote? Mr. Peterson? Did you need him back?
Yeah, I just happened to think of
Sorry,
a
he would like you
question,
back. Don't leave anywhere till we vote on the item again. Sorry about that. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the question that I had gotten from a person in my district who actually rides these buses regularly is they're wondering, are they going to be able to buy bus passes and kiosks or other locations around town so it's more convenient? They said if it was more convenient to buy these, I think that people would buy them more often, there'd be more ridership.
We are certainly working on an aspect that would enable individuals to access our fare medium remotely. However, that's in progress right now. If all works out well, then we should have a pilot program by the 23rd, in sync with when the system gets updated as well, which is the 23rd. However, presently, the individual would be correct in that they're limited in terms of where they can obtain fare medium. Libraries, the Diamond Center, the Downtown Transit Center, including the TVM machine. And unfortunately, how the system operates right now, these TVM machines, they sort of look like old game arcade type boxes. They're big, they're clunky, and they're very costly for the level of effort that it requires to disseminate the fares. But if this mobile solution does pan out from a pilot test standpoint, then Anchorage's citizenry will have access so long as they have a phone to be able to tap into our fare medium.
Great. Thank you, Mr.
Is that all, sir? Okay. Any other comments from Assembly members? See no comments, please vote. That is approved 10-0. Next item in front of us is item 14B, Resolution Error 2017-272, resolution approving administrative agreement between the Municipality of Anchorage and International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, 1547, regarding working out of class for foreman position. For Employee Relations Department, there's the accompanying Assembly Memorandum AM 579-2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. If you wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clear for the record. Spell your last name, if you would, please. Anyone at all? This is on the IBAW contract?
I'm not a Jedi any longer.
You what?
I've been freed. I'd like to notify you all, Duyan bought all of North America territories on eBay from the Empire Intergalactic Senate. On our operating oil well, do you plan on raiding our oil for weapons of mass destruction, Jedi?
Okay, thank you very much for letting us know that. Take care. Any other comments on this item? Hearing and seeing no comments, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the
Move to approve.
I need a second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from Assembly members. Please vote. That is approved by the body. Vote was 10-0. Next item in front of us, item 14C, Ordinance AO 2017-112, an ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, amending ordinance number 2017-45 to amend the definition of refunding candidates and Exhibit A for the issuance of water revenue refunding bonds of the municipality, Finance Department, and investments. There's an accompanying Assembly Memorandum AM 604-2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. Hearing and saying no one, public testimony is closed. Votes with the body.
Second.
I need a second. Okay. Discussion from Assembly members. Not seeing any. Please vote. Well, it was 11-0. That was approved by the body. Next item in front of us is 14D, ordinance AO 2017-113, an ordinance authorizing disposal by competitive bid of Heritage Land Bank HLB parcel 1007-C, legally described as Tract C, 007 subdivision plat 99-12, PID 015-211-10 in Chugiak, and amending the 2016 HLB annual work program and 2017-2021 five-year management plan, real estate department, accompanying assembly memorandum AM 605-2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your inquiry for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Lillian Mercer, M-E-R-C-E-R, and I own the piece of property across the road from this parcel. I was at the last assembly meeting when it was delayed indefinitely, and I had hoped that I'd be able to not have to worry about it for a while. Heritage Land Bank had told me at the meeting I had attended there that to sign up for my community council meeting emails, and I'd be notified of any new information on the sale. So I'd signed up for it and hadn't heard anything. So this is the only place I figured I could express my concerns, because they told me that there was nothing to worry about, that they'd tell me when something was going to come up. They had told me that after you guys had approved the bid, I'd be able to ask about the restrictions that were placed on the land, and otherwise that Title 21 would cover everything, but I haven't seen anything about any of the restrictions that were supposed to be on there. This is all undisturbed forest. There was a reason, we had asked for the restrictions to be placed on there that had included no clearing of the land, that the purchaser used the road that was wrongfully put in by a new landowner, and for all the perk testing and water flow testing be completed, and, the lots be at least an acre in size. None of the Heritage Land Bank hadn't, answered any of my questions with that. They just told me once the bidding was approved and everything, I could go back in and talk with them, and I haven't heard anything back, so I'm just wondering when those concerns can be answered.
I think we may have some answers for you. Mr. Dyson, sir?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to know from whoever what notification process to adjacent property owners in the area was done, which I would hope was required.
I received a notice an hour before the Heritage Land Bank meeting.
I was thinking from the administration here.
Mr. Abbott, is Robin around here?
I have a question for this person before she's done, so.
I'll get to you in a minute. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, are you looking for a response during the public hearing?
I just want Robin to be able to answer his questions. So when she's done, we're going to ask you a question.
I don't care, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to have Robin answer the question, and then the adjacent property owner can just stay there as far as I'm concerned.
Sit down if you want, ma'am. He's right there.
Through the chair, Mr. Dyson, the public is notified under the Title 21 requirements, which I believe is 500 feet within on the outside perimeter of the property for the Heritage Land Bank hearing.
By mail?
By mail, correct, along with the community councils.
And am I correct in assuming that happened?
That did happen, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Nabowski, you have a question for Robin Ward, too?
I do. Robin, Do you want me to wait and hold it until after public testimony and then get into the nitty-gritty? I can do that.
Okay, do that if you would, please. Mr. Constant, we're back to you, sir.
Ms. Mercer, so you mentioned potential restricted uses on the land. What kind of restrictions were you thinking or had you heard about?
Back in '07, when it initially went up for bid, there were restrictions placed on it. The person that bought the property was not supposed to clear cut it. They were supposed to use the access from the other landowner that's adjacent to the lot. As far as no clear cutting, there were supposed to be perk tests done, water flow tests done, because there's very little water on that land. And so I don't have access to the other restrictions that were placed on there. I couldn't find any documentation of it. But there were also, as far as lot size per residence, I believe it's supposed to be at least an acre per residence.
Mr. Constant, anything else?
No, thank you. We'll figure some of that out, I'm sure.
Ms. Dembowski?
Thanks. Hey, Lily, it's good to see you. What are your biggest concerns with this? Clearly, I'm getting from you that there's been clear cutting done and it wasn't supposed to be done.
Well, not yet, but there was, we're just worried about that because this is all natural forest and we don't want, right now it's Troy Davis, I guess I had put in a bid for it or is interested in buying it. We don't want someone to come in and clear cut it and find that there's no water. There's no way to build on it. It's all rocky slope.
Yeah, it is alpine. So the current zoning for it, I believe, is R10, and it's alpine. So under those current zoning conditions, I think some of the development might be limited. But so I'm trying to spot right now. What are the biggest issues and the restrictions that you would like to see on the sale?
The biggest concerns are right now there's people living down below there that have very little water. And so when they do put in this, the neighbors' concerns are that they're not going to have any water at all.
Okay.
I know it took us close to, well, my parents had bought the property back in '64, and in the last 10 years, they finally got a well. And we're not even in that area, so I mean, we're across the road from there.
Sure.
There's Mary Heater down the road that has barely enough water for herself.
Okay. So I'm not a lawyer. I can't necessarily give you advice, but have you filed with DNR for water rights?
Mary Heater down the road has. She does have water rights.
Do you know if any of the adjacent neighbors have done the same?
I'm not sure about the others.
Okay.
But I believe there's a couple others that have below the hill too, or below this property.
Okay. What I'll commit to you that I will do, I will follow up with the planning department on this too, but I will go knock on all the neighbors' doors and make sure that everybody's filed for their water rights. So if for some reason they drill a well there and it impacts your well, then they'll be responsible for it.
Yeah, because I know that's Mary's biggest concern. She's a widow in her 70s and she doesn't have money for any more well drilling, so.
Yeah, no,
it's a major
that I
concern.
totally understand that. I thank you for bringing that to our attention. We really appreciate it. And I will do that this week. I'll make sure to go knock on all their doors, okay?
Yeah, because she'd expressed to me to make sure that that was brought up.
Yeah, that's a huge concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dembowski. Thank you for your testimony, ma'am.
Excuse me,
Mr. Dyson?
Yeah, sorry, I'm slow. So it was represented to us that everybody within 500 feet received a mailing on this impending action. Am I correct that you did not?
I received it an hour before the meeting started at Heritage Land Bank.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I received it an hour before the hearing at Heritage Land Bank.
So you received nothing by mail?
I received the mailing. I got it an hour before the hearing.
She said she got an hour before the
Yeah, no, I got it. I'm just
Correct.
trying to, my mail comes about noon, but be that as it may, do you know if your neighbors had gotten?
The Mary Heater down the road, she didn't receive anything.
All right, thank you.
And I don't know if anybody else did, but I did make it to the Heritage Land Bank meeting, though.
Oh, excuse me, I misunderstood. So you got notification from going to the meeting?
Yeah, to make it to the meeting, I had an hour to get there.
Yeah. All right, I understand now. Thank you.
Yeah, it was
Mr. Constant, sir?
Yeah, this brings up a point for Mr. Hart over there. I think that we ought to put some special considerations on how we do notice, and to the Heritage Land Bank, in these areas that have really large tracts of land. A 500-foot notification would actually sometimes not even leave the property, right? And so it seems to me there's a disconnect if we're actually seeking to give input to the public. So I just would think we might want to come up with some consideration that helps to get notice to people who are on those large lots.
Ms. Dombowski?
No, I can address his comments during debate, too.
Okay.
I'll wait till we're done public testimony.
Mr. Wilton, any questions for this lady?
No, I was going to offer clarification on Mr. Constant's points, but it sounds like Ms. Dombowski can handle that. And I think Mr. Whitfield's here, too, if there were questions.
There are no other questions, ma'am. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Anyone at all? Welcome to the meeting, sir.
Thank you. My name is Kurosh Parto, P-A-R-T-O-W. I'm with Troy Davis Homes. We are actually inquired about...
Could you pull the microphone up to your mouth?
We are hoping to be able to acquire this parcel if we win the bid, I guess. I just want to reassure the Assembly and all the public here that the format of the houses and the parcels that we develop, and you, Ms. Dombowski, you're probably familiar with that, are all single-family homes. The minimum size of our lots generally are 1 acre or 1.5 or 2. In this parcel, we are thinking we're going to be able to develop 7 to 10 lots overall. I just wanted to, and that's the nature of the type of business that and the structures and homes that we run.
Okay. Mr. Wilton, a question, sir?
Maybe for the speaker or some others, but if this is zoned R10, isn't the minimum lot size something like 5 acres?
No. It depends on the slope.
Depends on the
acre and a
slope.
quarter, yeah,
What's
acre
your
and a
slope
quarter
there?
to 5, depending on the slope.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Dyson, question for this gentleman?
I assume that you're either willing to assume the risk of no water or have some confidence that you'll be able to find water or provide another source of water for your place.
That is correct.
And is it also correct to assume that you're not planning on mowing down every tree on the...
No, not all of home buyers. They like that type of clear cutting or condo style or zero lot lines. I mean, we are well known for custom homes and a lot of land and a lot of trees around the houses.
Yeah, and I assume that does your plan for the access for the homeowners satisfy the road situation that...
If we, I said if we win the bid, yes, it'll be a single road going inside with one access to Jasmine.
Yes, and then finally, if I may, I think our land use regulations are quite clear that there's to be no drainage issues from your property that impact people downhill.
Absolutely. That's part of the platting procedure, yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Ms. Dombowski for this gentleman?
Yes, please. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Kurosh Parto, P-A-R-T-O-W.
And you're a home builder?
Yes.
And who's your what company?
Troy Davis Homes.
That's what I thought. Okay. Thank you.
There are no other questions, sir. Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Ms. Dombowski?
Thank you, Robin. Could you just clarify for the body, with this particular piece of property, any restrictions that are on the sale or on the deed of the property that you're aware of?
Not that I, through the chair, Mr. Dombowski, I'm not aware of any. We believe that Title 21 and the DCM will cover the concerns that have been expressed here tonight. And if you don't mind, I might have Mr. Whitfield come up and verify that. But we feel that the subdivision process and the requirements before you can actually even subdivide, plat, and enter into a subdivision agreement would probably cover those. But again, I'll refer to him.
Come on down.
Come on down, David.
Dave, so you heard the testimony of Ms. Mercer when she was concerned about clear cutting and some of the water issues that might impact the neighbors. Just for some, maybe, can you just give clarification on how you analyze that in your department and what restrictions or parameters are there for builders?
Yeah, through the chair, Ms. Domboski. If Troy Davis Homes was to bring in an application for subdivision to develop the lots, to develop the property, they would be required to submit documentation for soils, water availability. That would be routed through our on-site department for review to determine whether or not there was suitable water on the property to provide water to the resultant parcels. So it is reviewed through the subdivision process. The property is zoned R10. It is dictated by slope. The minimum lot size is dictated by slope. So more than likely, you're going to see lots created in excess of 1 acre, 43,560 square feet. So I think you could rest assured that it will be reviewed through the subdivision process.
Okay, thank you. And just my familiarity with this area, this particular area, all the homes that are around that area have pretty good sized lots. They're all kind of right around 1 acre, if not bigger, right? From your...
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So what I can tell you is, I don't have any more questions for you, thank you. In this particular, my district, one of the one and only home builders you're seeing build right now is Troy Davis, frankly. And the homes that they're putting in are high-end homes. I would say probably, I'm guessing over 500,000, at least over 400, but probably over $500,000 homes. They're pretty impressive, I have to tell you. But there's no question, as we develop, one of the biggest issues we struggle with in different parts of my district is water. And one of the biggest concerns I have, especially when we get up on the mountain, because I've seen it more and more, where somebody will drill a well and then a neighbor who's been there for 20 years has all of a sudden lost water. And that's what Lily's concerned about. It sounds like the biggest concern. And that's why I go to the route of talking to my residents about making sure they file for their water rights through DNR, because the recourse they have sometimes is limited. I will support this. I think, especially in our district, we're not asking for a rezone here. We're not increasing the density in any way. And they will be mitigated basically by the current zoning that's there right now. We're talking about a 19-acre parcel. It's pretty big. And with that parcel that size, think potentially 7 homes. It's still going to be very rural and characteristic. And from the other developments that I'm seeing with Troy Davis and down in the Birchwood area, and they're doing some infill developments too. What I'm seeing is most of the houses that they have, the lots are still treed. In my district, people don't like to be on top of each other, and they don't like their lots to be clear cut. They like to kind of be tucked in. So I would anticipate this will be the same. But I'm definitely going to do exactly what I promised my constituent to do. I will go knock on the doors and make sure each one of my constituents that have concern about their water, this is brought to their attention that we took this action tonight. So, thank you.
Other comments from assembly members before we vote? Not seeing any. Please vote. That item was approved 11-0. Next item in front of us is item 14E, ordinance AO 2017-114, ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, authorizing the borrowing and accepting from the State of Alaska Drinking Water Fund an aggregate amount not to exceed $5,258,000 for the purpose of financing a portion of 7 AWW capital improvement water projects, providing for related matters. Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utilities, accompanying a same memorandum, AM 206-2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record and spell your last name. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying none, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion from Assembly members. Please vote. Item was approved, 11-0. Next item in front of us will be item 14F, Ordinance AO 2017-115, Ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, authorizing the borrowing and accepting from State of Alaska Clean Water Fund, aggregate amount not to exceed $14,522,200 for the purpose of financing a portion of 11 AWWU capital improvement wastewater projects, providing for related matter. Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility accompanying a same memorandum, AM 607-2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. If you wish to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record, spell your last name, tell us what town you live in. Hearing and saying no, and public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion from Assembly members. Seeing no discussion, please vote. Items approved, 10-0. Next item in front of us is item 14G, Resolution Air 2017-290, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving a marijuana license and special land use permit for a marijuana cultivation facility with license number M12770, doing business as Secret Garden Cannabis, located at 726 East 15th Avenue, Fairview Community Council, case number 2017-0099. Municipal Clerk's Office and Planning Department, accompanying a same memorandum, AM 611-2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record and spell your last name if you would, please. Welcome to the meeting.
Hello, my name is Monica Emerton, E-M-E-R-T-O-N, and I own Green Connection. We are stationed right next door to where this facility is potentially going to be opening. Our main concern, which I have spoken to the petitioner about, is we are afraid we might be more of a target with a cannabis facility coming in next door. We are a greenhouse facility. If you guys aren't familiar with us, you can see us on the drive up when you're coming into downtown on the highway. And we actually have been with the company for about 15 years, and I would say this past 6 months, we've seen just as much crime happening, or we have gotten broken into just as many times the last 6 months as we had the previous 15 years. And I believe a lot of that's due to people thinking we're actually a cannabis shop. So my main concern, because our name, unfortunately, is not the best, so that's honestly one of my main concerns with them coming into the neighborhood, is that might significantly impact us. And I would argue with point F, as far as the improvement standards, that this could be a negative impact for the neighborhood. So,
Thank you. Any questions from Assembly members? Thank you, ma'am, for being here. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, and public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. Mr. Whittleton, sir?
The Community and Economic Development Committee spoke about this 2 Thursdays ago, and we recommended support. And I would like to just make a note, in B3, you need a retail with your cultivation, and we will be dealing with the retail operation in a moment. I'm done. Thank you.
Mr. Constant, sir?
Yeah, thank you. This petitioner has participated at the Fairview Community Council for the better part of 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, and has sought to engage with the community. They've performed all the requirements of creating their neighborhood responsibility plan in the neighborhood that worked hard to create the neighborhood responsibility plan. The Community Council communicated to me that they are welcoming of this business and hopeful that they will participate in the revitalization of the neighborhood. And other than this testimony, I've only heard positive. There was one other negative comment that was in the packet that was a property owner about a quarter mile away. So I am supportive of this petition and ask for you to support it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Dombrowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to speak about something. I probably should have made it more clear in the last item that we brought up, in which I spoke. But, yeah, I didn't smoke, trust me. I didn't smoke, nor did I inhale.
Flip or what?
No, it was not. But which I spoke. When we're evaluating any item before us, we have to evaluate it on multiple levels. But one of them, and you'll see it in the packet under item F to which the speaker was referring, the very first line is the standard met? That's what we have to gauge. We can absolutely take testimony and consider public impact. And I think what the Green Connection is dealing with now is already a very big spike in crime. And I think anything basically saying now we're going to bring in a pot shop and now we could be a bigger target, I think it's a valid concern, frankly. But it's speculative in nature. And so when we're trying to evaluate, is the standard met? Do these people meet the letter of the law? Do we have a knowable, quantifiable potential for impact? If this was next door to a school, the conversation would be totally different, right? But the fact is it's speculative at this point. So what I would say to the people that are concerned from the last speaker is I would really document when these people come in and they start their operations, document to see if we do see a trend from this being co-located right next to you, because that could be an inhibiting factor to their license. They have to come back to us every year. So it's something that, is quantifiable and measurable. And it's something that we won't be arbitrary if we were to make the decision that this isn't a good location. Right now, it feels like it'd kind of be a very speculative, arbitrary decision. And what I can tell you, I've had the opportunity to talk to the owners of this particular facility in our Community and Economic Development Committee meeting. And I get the sense from these owners, and actually it was a comment I thought about making before your testimony. We get a lot of people in front of us. These owners seem very engaged and very responsible, frankly, in my opinion. I would be very surprised hearing my comments today if they're not incredibly proactive to try to make sure security is enhanced and whatnot in their facility, because they're tying up a lot of their own resources in order to get this license. And they know now, it's on the record, this is one of the factors I'm looking at for renewal of their license next year. So we take your comments very, very seriously. And I know they will too, because their attorney's sitting right next to them, and she knows I'm kind of a pain. And but that's our job. That's our job for you, to make sure that the community isn't negatively impacted by somebody who moves in next to you and you've been there 15 years. So, oh my gosh, you said you've been there 15. Yeah, 40 years. So it's important to us to make sure that we try to limit the conflicts as much as possible. And they're already in a district. B3 zoning is one that was added at the last minute to allow in these districts. And the closer we get to residential, the more conflict they'll have. And they've heard me lecture them on this many times. So especially in these mixed-use zoning districts, we are going to be very sensitive to the neighbors that are there already. Thank you.
Other comments from Assembly members? Seeing no comments, please vote. That is approved 11-0. Next item in front of us is item 14H, Resolution AR 2017-291, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, approving a marijuana license and special land use permit for marijuana retail sales establishment with license number M12768, doing business as Secret Garden Cannabis, located at 726 East 15th Avenue. Fairview Community Council, case number 2017-0100. Municipal Clerk Office and Planning Department. There's accompanying same memorandum, AM 6/12/2017. Public hearing item is now in front of us. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from assembly members. Mr. Constant, sir.
You know what, I'm going to let John go first, if that's okay. Speak from the committee, and then I'll go.
Okay, John?
Oh, yeah, just I guess reiterate that the Community Economic Development Committee did look at this 2 Thursdays ago, and we recommended approval.
Okay. Mr. Constant, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Two things. Mr. Weddleton, it looks like the packet had those backwards. We had the retail second, but it doesn't really matter, but just technically speaking, you have to have a retail establishment to get a license for a grow in the B3 district. And to your point again, Ms. Emerton, my greater concern for the neighborhood is that between the creek and even parts of Midtown, all the way up to First Avenue, we have the hottest crime bed in the city. It's the maps are red hot, hotter than really anywhere else, and we have essentially a crime wave in the downtown that other neighborhoods can't understand. And I don't believe this business will be providing harm to you, and I know that they'll be working with you to come up with solutions and be partners with the neighborhood, because that's the commitment they made to the community council. And I just want you to know that the Public Safety Committee hears from me every month about the nature of the problems in the district, because these problems are in some ways outrageous, immoral, and unbelievable that our city has grown to allow this to be the norm in our neighborhood. So I apologize to you.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Any other comments from assembly members? Please vote. You have your license. It's 11-0. That completes our agenda. We're now down to special orders. There are none. Audience participation, item 17. Is there anybody who would like to address the assembly on any item that was not a public hearing item? Anyone at all? Seeing no one, item 17 is closed. We're down to assembly comments. Any comments from assembly members? We're now down to
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Dyson.
I pushed my button. I thought it pushed yours. But be that as may,
Throw a rock at me. Sometimes I don't see it. Sorry.
Cheer up. It gets worse. I asked the indulgence of my colleagues to make a few comments. I asked a couple of weeks ago we had testimony about somebody that couldn't evict squatters from their property. Mr. Falsey got back to me and said that, as I remembered, the municipal code is quite clear, and there's a clear path to evicting squatters. And as often happens, there's at least 2 sides to every story. We only heard one. Anyways, I'm satisfied. I have misspoke to assembly members about 2 things. Just this week, I told Mr. Steele that I had measured keel scours at 35 meters offshore in the Beaufort Sea. It was 35 feet. And I didn't do it personally. It was part of a team, a small part of a team that did it. Also, I said somewhat confidently that the dome would not be rebuilt as it is. The board that represents the owners is apparently trying to go ahead. There are very significant safety issues that a future failure could actually happen exactly as this last one did. The dome collapsed completely within 6 seconds, and the exits were, you couldn't get to them because the dome was down. So I made sure the administration has the safety report, some 50 pages on it, and so on. But what I said was in error. I didn't know it at the time. Last week I heard a presentation from the AEDC, Bill Popp, who has credibility with me. I asked him afterwards if there was things that the city could quit doing that would help economic development, or there's things we could do that were proactive. He brightened up quite a bit. He and I are going to meet. He said we've done a couple of things. The thing on the small property where you couldn't get title to a piece in order to get a loan, he said that was really helpful. He said there's some other things apparently the Assembly isn't I'm going to meet with him, maybe John will join me, and if there are other significant things that that group knows that we could do, I'll bring that back to you through our committee. And then one more thing, this, I don't want this to sound patronizing, but as the ad says, I've seen a few things and I know a few things. And so this is a little bit of counsel from an old horse. I've been asked over and over the same questions. What's wrong with my head that I volunteered for this job? And I'm glad to do it. I've asked, is it fun? And I've said, of course not. Not crazy about that. And so, also, am I giving you all hell and giving the mayor hell? And certainly that's not my intent, and I don't think I have been, and it's a stupid way to try to move the political process. I am, as I hope you are, honored and humbled to have the job. And I want to tell you that it's a significant one. Our national government and our guiding documents set our system up for citizen legislators. And that is people who are generally not professional politicians. And I want to encourage you that your personal experience, whatever work you've had, life experience, and your own convictions, you have every right and perhaps a duty to bring them to this table. And that's how we make our system work. And most of you have very different backgrounds and different professional experience. That's a delight. And you will bring expertise and a perspective that I want you to be encouraged to have confidence in and use it. We sit as the board of directors for this city and are stewards of its assets. And I want you to understand that that's not something you do on autopilot. That's something that we ought to be proactive about. And under our form of government, the legislative branch, which we are the policy setters. We're the ones that are supposed to guide the ship. And what we end up doing almost always, de facto, is letting the administration take all the leadership and so on, and we're kind of rubber stamps, and we tinker around the edges. 6 or 7 years ago, I sat with the head of the legislative's financial and budget group, researchers who do all that work for the legislature, looked across the room, everybody wasn't there, to the director, and I said, Mr. X, you're bummed out, what's going on? And he went through some process to decide whether or not to honestly answer my question, and he said, how'd you know? I said, man, you're stepping on your lower lip, what's happening? And he said, I have seen over 10 or 12 years hard-charging governors and legislators come here and want to make a difference. Inevitably, within 18 months, the system wears them down, and they do nothing but tinker around the edges. And I would encourage you, that if you have a heart for it, to be proactive, get your dreams and desires for the community, your vision of how things ought to be, and work it. And you'll be surprised at how often your instincts and your experience bring you to very, very good conclusions. And some of them I'll help you on. Some of them I'll stand on the sidelines and cheer. And the rest of the time, I hope to be protecting your back, even if you're wrong, and keeping jerks from bushwhacking you from behind, particularly the ones on my end of the political spectrum. But and we can argue about the extremes of whose politics have the most nutcakes.
Anything else, Mr. Dyson?
Yeah, I looked on my notes. Be cool. Yeah, that covers it. Thank you, and thank you for indulging.
The chair will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
We're adjourned.